So let's do the Pledge of
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So Mayor Smith is out of town, and we have essentially 3 discussions on the agenda for tonight. I'm kind of figuring they're all about half an hour or so.
You want to go on record as saying this? Go right ahead.
Is that an aspirational?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe the sun will not have set, and we will have satisfactorily covered all these issues.
Well, it's a basketball game tonight, so it's okay.
Is there basketball?
No.
Oh, there is no basketball.
Just hockey.
Oh, there's hockey, okay. All right, well, we're going to start off with the calling affectionately Hadley Lane. But those of you who are involved in that, I guess you want to come up or just run, or?
You can probably, if you want
Yeah,
to sit
you
up at the
reach
table
through.
at this point, wherever. I think it's easier just to talk it out.
We're gonna
Yeah, you are,
we're
sure.
gonna look at pictures or something.
Maybe, yeah.
So,
So I thought I'd just do a quick recap of where we've been up to this point. Just to be clear, and I know I was clear in some correspondence before, the board hasn't made any decision on whether they're accepting or not accepting the road. The last discussion that we had was almost exactly a year ago at a work session, and what eventually came out of that was that there was some willingness on the part of some members of the board at the time, and there was maybe less willingness by some members. So whatever it was, you heard what you heard, and so where we ended up after that is that we essentially identified 2 basic issues that I raised about the situation with the road. One is the ownership, which I know you worked on, and the other is the condition of the road. The condition of the road, there were some initial observations, and then we went into it a little further with our engineer, because we wanted you to have a complete picture of what the condition of the road is, and then try to work through what we think some of the conditions might be that the Board of Trustees would be requiring in order to accept the road. And that's most of the focus tonight. We just want to have a clear understanding of what's expected, because at any time, one of the things that I had indicated to you, Ron, was at any time you may look at this as more than we thought. There's bigger problems. I don't know, and you may say, never mind. We'll take care of it from here. That kind of thing. So. Just want to make sure there's full disclosure. Everyone's got as much information about this going forward. So, my understanding is the ownership situation has been worked out.
Well, Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but you finally got in touch with.
It took a while. I located through a lot of due diligence, his daughter.
Blancado.
Was it? Blancado, no, Blancado was a lawyer.
Yeah.
It was, I mean,
Wait, I forgot the name of the person who owned the property. Was it Dr. Pat?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was his
And
wife.
then, yeah. And Joe DeSalvo was representing the estate now, and he was prepared to do a quitclaim deed. He still had that, so, and I guess, your deeds, and some of the deeds that you had to the road, so maybe I need to get quitclaim deeds from some of the deeds. I forgot, I didn't know that would be on tonight, but
We're not really going into
it's
that
okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I think we worked
It's
through
ready
pretty
to
much
go.
all the issues that Dr. Padby passed right around the time this was all going on, and so we had to go through the estate. So they were grieving, we went to their wife, their daughter, and the son-in-law eventually took over, and the lawyers in Florida. I think we got pretty much everything we need, at least from them. Maybe you need some more from us, I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
we got all their blessings on everything.
Well, they didn't give the deed yet, though. I mean, I don't think so.
I
Because
believe my attorney has it, but I think he didn't want it.
well, they didn't, there's no point deeding it to us if we're not gonna take it, but they are prepared to offer a deed.
Nothing's transferred at this
It would
point.
go to us.
It would go directly to
Oh,
you
right.
guys.
If we accept the road, it would go, not go through you.
And I think you guys wanted that, just a cleaner, right from down to you guys, yeah.
If we didn't take the road, it would go to you.
Could.
Could.
Yeah.
So at least, whatever happens, at least your title is cleared up.
Yeah, I mean, so far we haven't cleared anything, but yeah.
It potentially clear.
Yeah, could potentially clear it, yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, so yeah, I wasn't intending on getting into it. I just,
It's interesting.
my understanding is that it was been taken care of, and it's largely been taken care of from what it
Yeah.
sounds like, so.
It's ready to be taken.
Exactly,
Of
right.
the two things you just mentioned, the ownership and then the condition of the road.
Sorry, it was just my chair squeaked.
Oh, okay. The ownership, is
Yeah.
clear, okay.
So, so the other part of it is the condition of the road, and as you all have a copy, and obviously you have a copy of the engineer's memo relating to those conditions, I thought it would be helpful to go through things, not in super detail, but in enough that you understand some of these items. And the first thing I'll say is that the memo, the first paragraph of this memo, which talks about an as-built survey, was done by the engineer without having access to an as-built survey. We did a search of our records, and we found an as-built survey from after the construction of the road took place back in 1990, I think it was. And I have this electronically, so I can pass it along to you. But I'll show you here. Well, I'll try to pass it around, but it's basically a subdivision map with the utilities shown and a few items. So some of the things that the engineer asked for here, are not, we don't need you to do another as-built survey, is my point. We did look at it just quickly at some of the locations where the utilities are marked, and especially on the water side and the sewer side, and everything seems where they're supposed to be, and, so it looks pretty accurate. So that kind of eliminates some of the things that are on this memo, but the important thing in paragraph 1 that is a concern that we've had a concern with on the most recently dedicated road is the existence of the retention basin, which is on the back of, it's probably one of your properties.
We only have 3 lots now,
Yeah,
so
well,
there's an empty lot, so it might be on the empty lot.
Yeah, it is, but this,
So this is Lydia's house probably, and so she owns, this is one,
they're merged.
they're merged.
Yeah, so
And
that's,
so there's nothing on that property, it's off to the side of my house, it looks like, I'm here.
right. So that retention basin, we as we did with Hugh Hill Lane, and probably numerous other subdivisions, is of no interest to the village in terms of maintaining it. We are not interested in entering on people's property to have to maintain that. My guess is that no one's maintained it. Things like that need to be looked at by, I guess, an engineer at this point. But our recommendation from staff is pretty consistent with other situations like this, and we would never recommend that the village take that over as part of a dedication.
So what exactly is that? Is that where water flows into?
Yeah, so looks like the drainage from the subdivision
Yep.
ends up in this catch basin, and ends up down here in this retention basin, which fills and then empties out slowly after a rain event into, the stream that's back here, Little Creek,
Right,
whatever
we're
it is.
supposed to go through Mercy,
Right.
and then out back.
Columbia, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Columbia, back onto the drainage at the bottom or something?
Yeah, again, it's not clear on here
Yeah.
exactly where it goes, but it may be different.
What did they mention the retention basin? I'm sorry.
What's the dimension?
What did they mention?
Oh, yeah, it's 180, yeah.
So, and what is that?
Somewhere where they. Oh, it's not in the road.
No. No, but it takes the drainage from the, very similar to Hugh Hill, and so in that instance, when the board did take dedication of Hugh Hill, we specifically excluded the drainage.
Right.
Is that a man-made, is it just excavated, or is there actually like a concrete retention basin there?
I'm assuming it's underground, but
You don't see anything, it's just grass.
You probably never knew it was there.
Because Irvington maintains all of our water and all the sewers and.
Water and sewer, but not storm sewer.
There actually is, there's some sort of gully back there. And it looks like rainwater would just flow down that and absorb and then eventually end up either in the ground or the overflow would go right back into, all the avenues to drain the ground, I guess. I don't think there's, I mean, I can't say that for sure, but there's no wall I can see or anything like that. It's grass and it's,
Probably you wouldn't see it unless you got to the creek, you'd see it out.
yeah.
I mean, we probably have some records about what is supposed to be there.
I'm wondering if it's even a pipe or if it's just, it looks like it's a stream. It looks like it's an above-ground stream. It doesn't, because there's nothing back there. It's all trees and shrubs and deer and stuff. But there is a visible, it looks like a canal with no water in it. So, on the structure, we can look into that.
Yeah.
Report and tell us, but-
Yeah, I mean, we didn't go and investigate that part of it,
That's-
at this stage anyway, so, and we may have records on how it's constructed and how it's supposed to perform and all that.
Yeah.
So the concern, I mean, the summary of all this is that I don't think we're not gonna recommend to the board that they accept the drainage if and when dedication takes place. That's the bottom line.
I mean, the thing is that underground storage retention systems have to be maintained, otherwise they,
Water law does require that, so,
normally, I think homeowners associations or whatever require at least a 10-year maintenance program.
That's understandable. I guess we should find out whether or not what's there. It may be nothing. If it's nothing, there's really nothing to maintain, I guess, right?
There has to be something.
I would think that since that's an as-built survey, that something was built there,
Oh, there might be a pipe going from the sewer right into that little drainage thing you're saying.
but it might just be an underground chamber that fills up and then lets out
Okay.
slowly.
There's usually something to that effect, then you got, the chamber is desilting the water.
Yep.
And then there's a secondary level that once it gets above, the desilted water can flow into
Whatever's there.
backstream is.
Usually after it's stopped raining. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the goal. So, okay. All right.
And what happens if that's not maintained? The water can back up into the street and flood the street or something? Is that-
Yeah, it would potentially fill up with silt and.
And it doesn't clean the water, so you're dumping
Yeah.
polluted water into effectively into whatever stream, the village or the.
Right, yeah, no, so it wouldn't perform the way it's supposed to.
It has
So.
nothing to do with the sewer, it just.
No,
Water off the
stormwater,
sewer. Right.
stormwater. Yeah. No, we don't want to
But,
mix that
but, you
up.
know, there's a lot of oil and
Yeah,
other kinds of
asphalt,
particulates
sure.
on the asphalts.
Yeah.
Okay, so the report noted, so you understand how I'm going through this, we don't require an as-built survey like where it says 1A of all the curbs and asphalt road, I mean, it's on the as-built, so we're good there. We're not interested particularly in overhead or underground utilities. I mean, utilities have been dealing with it for 25 years now, so, or however long they've been in there. Okay, so the next concern that we have is detailed on 2C, settlement in and around the catch basins, and so that definitely needs to be addressed. That type of settlement can indicate that either an inlet pipe or an outlet pipe has deteriorated, has failed, the water's going where it's not supposed to, and creates a sinkhole.
I've done some research on that.
Okay.
The sewer details.
Great.
Say
All right.
that again?
I've done some research on it to see exactly what we're looking at here.
Oh,
the sewer
okay.
details.
Of minor concern are 2D and E, which talk about some areas where there's missing or cracked curves. We would want those areas repaired. It's relatively minor. The last and main issue, I mean, there are other areas that are talked about here that are not our concern for tonight in the sense of, I mean, there's a whole section, number 3, that talks about the right-of-way. So, for example, the curb line might be here, but the actual right-of-way is bigger than that, and so some people put ornate plantings and other improvements in that area right along the road, and then the village comes along and destroys it, and it becomes a source of a problem. And so the way we deal with that, as long as there's nothing that's terribly concerning, which I don't think there is we would simply document it in a street opening permit, and we would say that the improvements, basically you're putting them there at your own risk. I mean, if you decide to put beautiful Belgian block right along the curb and our plow comes along and rips it up, not through any negligent act, but just in normal plowing, and that would be documented in a street opening permit. So that's not for tonight, but that's pretty straightforward.
That's
Yeah.
very fair, and if there wasn't really anything that we could, I don't know how far it goes back, but we didn't really have much.
We don't have a huge concern either. So the engineers are, here. So the main thing now is they do call out in 5 and mainly 5, the dimensions of the cul-de-sac and how it relates to the access by a fire truck. And well, to be frank, I'm not going to sit here 25 years later and say, by the way, it's been unsafe all this time and we haven't been able to get a fire truck in there, because that's not the case. So we're not going to be looking to somehow have the center island removed or anything like that. The actual dimensions don't match modern standards, but the fire department has confirmed to me that they have no issues with getting in and out of there. Is it a little tighter than it otherwise could be? Sure, but they can. You haven't been unprotected all this time, to say the least. So that's not an issue.
Fire trucks there.
The fire briefs, yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually witnessed them coming through. So
Right.
I have.
Right. So that's not the issue. The one issue that the fire department did have, and I referenced it quickly in an email to you, was actually naming the road. They feel very strongly about it, that, remember, this road has no name. We've been affectionately calling it Padley Lane. That's not what I'm suggesting. It's just we call it that because it's easy. And but right now, the addresses on that street are numbers of Ardsley Avenue West. And although the members of the fire department will tell you they all know how to get there, their concern is that down the road, there's room for mistake, and that's called out by the engineer. It's called out as a concern of the fire department, and I think that if it's going to be dedicated, it needs to be addressed. In fact, frankly, even if it's not dedicated, it probably needs to be addressed, but just for everyone's safety. So with that, I'm putting it on the table. I know you said you would consider it, but that's something that
So what is
they
the
felt
issue
strongly about.
exactly? It needs to be called Ardsley Avenue West Extension, or needs a unique name?
It needs a separate and unique name.
But the numbering doesn't have to change.
They can do what they want on the numbering, but
To one more.
We're thinking shop.
no, I already, that's, all in favor?
If I can respond, obviously there is quite a bit of legwork that goes into that. Federal taxes are filed there, a mail's been there. There's so many things that go along with it. I don't know how naming goes. I mean, I think we're open to it if that's one of the conditions you guys are mandating. We'll painfully come up with something new. Maybe staying in the spirit of kind of what it is, like Ardsley Avenue West Court, or I don't know, something that keeps it similar, where like it's not such a big.
Will still come to us.
It's not such a big change. Maybe that's something we can come up with. I don't know, but.
Well, it's
something that if you.
it's a future discussion. We have a suggestion or two, but I think, something that's unique should be done. I mean, it's,
Well, do you know whether the fire department would be okay with something like Ardsley Avenue West Court?
again, I hadn't heard that before, so
Yeah,
No.
it's interesting. We didn't used to be on GPS, and now we're
Now
on
we are.
GPS. So like,
We are.
and without even having the road dedicated, they've now
Right.
mapped our street somehow.
What
So
do they call it?
Or is that?
Ours Avenue West.
No, now
Yeah,
it
when
comes
you
up.
plug in my address, it
Comes up
shows up
now.
on
It used to be that
GPS.
people would get very lost, but now on all the updated GPS devices,
What are your numbers?
54, 58, and 62.
And the last number on,
It goes 52 on that side.
Right, and then you come into the cul-de-sac, and then it's R3.
58, 54.
It's not the numbering that's off.
no,
It's just that it's like a sign.
It's just not on,
I
yeah.
understand that, I'm just curious.
Yeah, if you tell someone that without a GPS
Right.
updated, you tell someone to go find this address on Ardsley Avenue West, they're gonna drive right past the road. I mean, now they won't, if the GPSs work correctly. but-
GPSs are working.
So I'm just leaving it out there, it's an issue, I think it should. Exactly, but that's there.
And there's a hidden roadway sign
I know, I saw that.
That's a good,
It's,
Colin Hidden
safety
Road,
wise, that's important.
Colin Hidden
well, we have,
The Lost Road.
well, we think the,
Isley Avenue hidden.
we think through some very basic research that the house that is the first house on the right that actually doesn't exit out onto, that's none of your houses, right? The one that actually exits out on Ars Avenue West?
Right, that's the house that used to own the land.
That was the
Right,
one.
and that house was called Glencoe, which is the name that was referred to in that letter that you sent us a copy of, so.
Nice guy.
But the estate was called that, and there's references to it in the Irvington Gazette going back to the 40s, so prominent people that lived there.
So from a historical perspective, Glenn, or something is
Whatever.
interesting.
Or Larry Lane.
Not exactly.
Glencoe's a great name. It's beautiful, actually. I mean, I kind of like that better, to be honest.
Yeah.
Do you have that intersection?
Yeah,
Which one are you looking at, Larry? I'm
Item
sorry.
4.
Item 4, yeah, we reviewed that. I think if there's anything, it's probably minor vegetation that should be looked at, but there was nothing that was structural in terms of the visibility at that intersection.
And do we know if there's been any accidents there?
No, there was no indication of anything significant, yeah. So, I mean, there should be a stop bar painted on the road, that's fine. I mean, those aren't the major issues that we're concerned about. So then the only other, there were 3 other things that were not part of the engineer's report that were of concern specifically. One is our DPW is not terribly equipped to deal with landscaping, and they're not terribly interested in cutting the grass on the grassy island. I don't know how that happens now, but they have.
I don't either.
Yeah.
No, it's taken care of by them. We read.
I mean, there was, for a long time, the village had plenty of help in order to deal with the cutting of grass in right-of-ways, and that responsibility has been passed on to adjacent property owners. So really the capacity to deal with just throwing someone out on a truck and throwing to cut grass is, on a regular basis, is just not there anymore. And we have some small responsibilities, but not like we did before. So they were concerned about that.
And the grass on the other side is actually the property of, they take care of that.
52.
They take care of that on that
Right.
side.
Okay. And
Are trees in relatively good condition? Are there any trees that we end up being responsible for that we're not responsible for now in terms
It's
of?
all property.
yeah, I think so. The only reference was there was a reference to needing the trees trimmed back from the roadway.
We just did that.
Yeah, okay, so,
We just did it so the stop sign is nice and clear.
great.
Good question, yeah, there's
No,
no
it's
tree.
all
It's all
outside.
on
I
us.
live on property that has a right of way.
Yeah,
Had to come and take a tree down.
yeah, oh yeah, no, it's a big expense.
It wasn't mine.
No, it was our expense, you're right.
Now it's.
Which is now yours. So, the second issue was an observation by, again, our DPW, that there are no streetlights on your road, and all of the utilities are underground. So, if you're interested in having a streetlight, we would pay the electricity going forward, but you need to put it in before dedication happens. It's expensive to put in a streetlight. It's not just slapping up an arm and a light, you know what I'm saying? So you can decide that on your own.
Out of curiosity, now you guys switched all the lights over to solars, right?
LED.
Oh, sorry, LEDs. Yeah. But they are.
No, they're solar activated, but they're not, they are connected to electric, yeah.
Okay.
But we have, don't we have some degree of green energy, electricity for the village?
Not
Or is it
anymore.
just NYSERDA?
Not anymore.
So it would require us to have a pole put in, plus the LED light, plus a connection to electric?
Yes, which is underground.
Yeah, that's if we wanted lighting.
If you want a light there, again, they can change their mind, this is coming from me,
Right.
so.
Do we have any other streets that don't have, are there other streets without lights?
I mean, Hugh Hill Lane doesn't have any lights.
Huh.
They made a request about a month after it was dedicated, so.
Yeah, I mean,
We've learned.
Well, but.
yeah, no, but it seems to me, that I would think that if the road were being built now, we would require a light, right?
Yeah.
What are,
For Hugh Hill.
If it's for private roads, we would.
no,
Yeah, but
It
this was being
village
built,
road.
this was,
If this were being built as a road that the village was gonna take over, I would think we would
okay,
require
okay.
a light, and if we're gonna take it, I don't know.
I'm under the impression that the village doesn't really accept new roads in general, and this, ours is a historical thing, and that's the reason it's being considered.
Well, it hasn't come up.
well, there
Yeah,
haven't
they
been,
have.
there haven't been subdivisions built, so it's not a
Yeah,
matter
they
of
did.
accepting the
In
roads.
some road, like in, the,
Few,
yeah, what's it, I always forget the name, the Harse Mountain subdivision,
Legend Hall.
Legend Hollow. Some of those streets the village took, not all of them.
That was the last large
So, yeah, I
subdivision.
think so.
Yeah. So anyway, that's, again, just pointing that out. And then the last thing, and I don't know if this is still the case, there was a mention at one point, Mary Ann, about,
Excuse, just before we go
Yes.
on streetlights, just so it's clear, so it's also possible that the board might decide that we would require it as a condition of dedication?
sure, that'd be good.
Sure.
So you might decide you want it, you might decide you don't, we might decide we do, or everybody might say we don't care.
Or you might say, if we take the street, you can't ask for streetlights after.
Right.
Sorry, this is our other neighbor.
Okay. Then the last item related to title insurance. Is that still, there was a mention at one point in an exchange we had about the need.
Yeah, I thought they got you guys. Well, let's talk, title insurance. I mean, in a way, we really can't if somebody says, you know, they don't really own it, it's not yours, we don't really care. You know, with streets, it's kind of funny.
Right.
They'll take a look at it.
We might turn
I
around and say,
think
take it.
that's,
You can have it.
I say it's yours,
Go ahead.
yeah, I
We'll
think,
take
I
it back
think
to
we
fix
should.
that.
Okay, no, it came up at one point, so I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay.
We should clarify.
We'll clarify whether we think it's required or not.
Okay.
Those are really the main issues that we saw. You know, what I thought would be the result here is, you know, again, you're still, I think the ball's back in your court in the sense of you've got now an understanding of the things that would have to happen in order for dedication to take place. Again, that's not, as I started out saying, it doesn't mean that they're ready to accept dedication. That's something that we'll need to figure out. They'll have to deliberate at some point. But we need to make sure that you're still good with going forward. And if so, I think now, there was a reference in one of the notes that I sent you about if in fact you actually have a valid offer of dedication on the table right now. And the reason I said that is because at the time when you made the offer of dedication, you didn't actually own the property, you didn't have access to the property. So I thought at this point we could kind of, now that this has been explored on a few different levels, the ball's back in your court, and if you choose to make an offer of dedication with the conditions that we talked about, then we'll expect to hear from you. If you choose not to, then we won't hear from you again. I mean, right, it's a...
So how do we proceed with that? You want something in writing from us? Which, I mean, I just want to make sure I have all, it sounds like it's the retention basin, and you don't want to have ownership of that?
Right.
So would that involve a report? Like,
No,
just
that's
us?
just, no, you should just understand
Okay.
when the village accepts it, it's gonna specify that it's not
Gotcha.
accepting
Means-
responsibility.
Yeah, you can offer whatever you want. The bottom line is, our recommendation is that if they do accept, they're not going to accept that.
Oh, you're saying,
The drainage.
given that this discussion, are we still ready? The point that you probably care most about is that, no, not necessarily the drain, but the road naming. We're not sure yet. It was recommended by two departments on changing the name. He suggested something historical, Glen Cove, which was the house next to us.
See,
So totally different. We talked about potentially looking at. We talked about maybe trying to have some derivation of Worsley Avenue Court or something like that. We also expressed to them that it is a major thing for us to do that. It requires a lot of work and changes all sorts of historical papers involved, but that we were open to it if that was something that they required.
But Ron, you should also understand that there may be a requirement irrespective
Yeah, right, that's what I thought, Larry said, because of the
of
fire.
whether the village takes the road or not. If the village takes the road, you definitely have to do it. But even if they don't, they could require that. Fire departments can require it if it's necessary for fire safety.
And there was enough concern there that, you know, they expressed a significant concern that, you know, that they said the island's okay, but the problem we have is the name. And, you know, the name situation kind of drifted into oblivion and never got dealt with, frankly, because of just the situation was. But there was an intent to dedicate, as you know, from some of the correspondence that we saw. And there was an intention to name the road, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, but there was an intention to name it. That just never happened, so it kind of just drifted off. And you just look at numbers that were on Aussie Avenue West, not personally, but those houses. So they felt strongly enough that to bring it up specifically, and that's all.
So I think that's the thing you're going to be most concerned with, because the other things we aren't sure whether or not they require them, or even what a price would be if we can do something on it. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. But I guess at this point, you know, knowing what we know, are we still interested in offering the street for dedication? I know I am. Are you guys still interested in doing that?
You over it tonight, by the way. Yeah.
Okay, so you just want us to come back.
We weren't expecting, well, I wasn't expecting to
Oh, okay.
a deliberation now, because it's probably a little more complicated than that, but however you want to handle it, you know?
The streetlight thing is the thing I'm confused about. I guess, if we don't know if we would insist or not insist on a streetlight. I guess I'd like to know, besides Hugh Hill Lane, are there any other places in town that would be similar that don't have a streetlight? Would DPW know, or
I mean, I'd have to go back.
or the fire department might know, or?
But I don't think that's the key question, whether or not they exist. I
Well,
think the issue is
yes,
this a
would-
significant safety issue?
Right, would we require it? And my comparison would be, you know, if
Yeah, we didn't ask
it
that
is
question.
about the safety, but I'm just wondering if there's circumstances that have not been a problem before, even though there is no streetlight, would indicate it's not as much of a safety issue. Somebody could judge this, I'm sure.
We didn't ask that question of
Yeah.
our department, so we can go back and fill in the blanks a little bit.
I mean, I don't know what a
On that issue.
streetlight costs, but I imagine it's quite a bit to buy it and put it up.
Did you guys put them on the Hugh Hill street?
No.
No.
But wait, you said there are some on U Hill or there are none on U Hill?
I don't believe there's any.
There's not.
Maybe on the access road.
I maybe come just off of Park Road.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
That would be similar to what we have.
How many houses are on New Hill?
5 or 6.
Yeah.
Is it it's a cul-de-sac?
Yeah, but there's a leg that goes up to it, and then there's the cul-de-sac. But that leg was in existence for a while
Right.
with other houses that could have lighting. I just don't recall that.
I'll look into that.
There's only
Yeah,
Larry who wasn't here.
so just for next steps, you know, we'll come back to you with an answer. But it doesn't necessarily mean we've committed to doing anything because we don't have any prices yet. You guys will say, okay, now we have an offer on the table. Here are the things that we would need you to do, whether it's all of them or none of them or some of them. And then you'd come back to us and we would go get pricing and then, yeah, just want to make sure we're on the.
And that was my question, does it go in order of, or if we say we want to do it, you're sort of already embedded the price, and then we're
I think
saying,
you have to be comfortable with what.
but you have to, I think it's, we have to sort of do the third step first, we have to basically already sort of.
But we don't know what it is they require.
Well, I think you have to assume,
Well, there's a couple of things we have to clarify, but I think.
but basically you have to assume that's this list, figure out
Yeah,
what the most part of what this list is.
Yeah, there's only one or two things on here that required some additional follow-up. One was the streetlights that we just had the discussion about, and the other is the question of title insurance. The rest of it,
Yeah.
it's outlined in the engineer's report.
Okay.
All right, so
So the retention basin, I understand, the settlement around the catch basin, could you just, I don't have it on me, what is 2C? The minor crack curb thing, I don't even know what curbs, like how will we know which curbs we talked to Doug at,
Well, I think they're all the pictures are in the back. You have the,
Yeah, we have
the
it.
color one,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Yeah, so they don't have color here, but,
Okay. It's 2C, you mentioned 1 or 2 catch basins, right?
appears to be settlement and asphalt depressions around all 3 catch basins. The
Okay.
3 structures should be cleaned of debris for further inspection to confirm that there's a whole bunch of technical stuff here.
Right, but it's 2C you're looking at, so like,
Yes.
so I may, and you recommended, or you wrote, I actually recommended that we might use Han to do some of the work.
Not to do the work, but to, I think.
Do the inspection.
Well, Han will inspect it, yeah, you'll end up reimbursing, but Han can look at it, absolutely. Yeah.
They don't do the actual,
No, they
He might be able to recommend someone who does village work that,
Yeah, we can
work
work.
draw in
whatever specs.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if we want to do something, we want to make sure it's up to village standards. We don't want to have you guys come in and say, this is not what we want, or.
Yeah, no, we can do that.
That's not, yeah.
We can.
never done a catch basin before?
Okay.
No, we have an excavation contractor that we work with, I mean, obviously there's others, but, that's not a problem.
Okay. And I would talk to you about that,
Yep.
or?
And we can also get from you about if we want to try to find out an estimate for the light.
Yeah, I can give you some information, sure, yep. Our DPW can help with that.
There was a whole lot, I know Larry wasn't here, but there was a whole lot about the history of this, and I remember it, Janice and Mark probably remember it, but that it was up to a point about what the intention of the village was by the documents that you guys found, and I think Larry found some.
What the intention of the developer was.
What the intention of
I
the
can't
developer
tell you it was the
Right,
intention
it
of the
got it
village,
just
right?
to a point, and then it just, certain things just got dropped and never happened.
The final letter that we found was that, it seemed to be intense of it potentially happening, but there was never a commitment. And then there was a final letter that said the village is not comfortable accepting the road for dedication because the street hadn't been completed. So one house was
The
built.
houses on the street hadn't been completed.
Yeah, one house was built and he tried to get it dedicated, and they didn't want to accept it at that point for sure without the other houses built.
And that was the end.
And then took 10 years for another house to go up.
Oh, okay.
And by that time, that guy had moved on, and everybody just moved on. There was never any follow-up on it.
Right, and there was something about trucks and there would be some houses that were gonna be built
Right.
that they didn't wanna take on but then there weren't a lot of houses built.
Any damage to the street caused by construction
Right.
of the new houses, the town didn't want, or the village, didn't want to have ownership of the road at that point.
Right, and we're not even taking up issue, the engineer cites the fact that there's cracking in some of the pavement.
But it's not.
This road's been in for 25 years, we're not concerned with it, it's got a solid base, it doesn't have to be paved tomorrow. I mean, obviously if it was, we would be looking at it differently, but that's not the case, so we're not even taking up issue with that.
That's great. I spoke to the engineer. He said the road is in good condition and wouldn't be on the list to be paved for a long time.
And we don't do salt, so.
Right.
That makes a
The
big
curbs happen all the time.
Yeah, there's a little damage,
Catch basins.
that's not a big
I guess I have no idea how big.
All right, so I think,
Great.
your marching orders.
Okay.
Just keep marching, whatever. Right?
It's only a year ago, they were here a year ago.
It's an important march, so.
All right, well, maybe I'll write a book about it.
No, we're going to keep it quiet.
Okay.
I'll see if we can find on the drainage as well, to see if there's some information about the
On the
basin,
back.
just to give you that, yeah.
Just to know what it is.
Well, you should know what it's involved in maintaining it, I mean, regardless of whether any of this happens, we're not taking it, so it's, at least that's not what I'm recommending, so.
And the island thing was clear, right, that DPW doesn't want to plant it or. Right, okay.
Yeah, it's just not, we could make the argument that it's the duty of the adjacent property owners anyway, so.
Yep.
And that's what you are. Okay.
That's great. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
No, not at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is.
I have all that information from U Hill, because the dimensions of this particular roadway are almost identical to U Hill, so I can pull that out very easily.
Yeah, I just don't want to be in.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I thought you still have.
That's all right. I'll go. You go ahead and I'll say.
I just was going to ask, when did we accept U Hill?
I looked it up today, and now I can't remember.
Within the last
Late,
2 years.
late 2015, maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, it was very recent.
Yes, yes, it's in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Something like that.
So I just don't want it to be a condition that for some reason now we've broken the last, fraction of manpower and now we're gonna need a new employee just to take the extra load.
Right, I mean,
It's the proverbial straw.
right, yeah, no, I as much as Greg wouldn't want me to say this, I think we're okay with the plowing that's associated with this road. And,
As long as you don't have to mow it.
yeah, well, I mean, that's an issue. It
They
really is.
made that clear.
With the village, other than the plowing, is there any other further impact on village services? I mean, fire's gonna go in anyway, cops are gonna go in anyway,
Yeah, I mean, the garbage
garbage.
gets picked up, yeah.
Well, eventually repaving,
Which,
Yeah, but,
eventually.
Yeah, 20
When it gets
years.
repaid, would then be us repaving it, so it's basically, it's garbage.
well, actually, the other thing is,
Garbage is
the
already.
catch basins have to be cleaned every year or every other year. They gotta be cleaned out, so that's 3 new ones that they've gotta vacuum out. Purpose is the village has to keep them clean.
yeah, well, we'll look at that more closely. I'm not sure what the wording is going to be on the dedication of those yet. I don't know.
Don't we normally take them, but we don't take anything they're connected to?
Oh, no.
Oh, I don't think,
You gotta look at
I don't think we did on here.
I know, yeah,
We didn't take any of the drainage system, they were responsible for the drainage system.
Even the catch basins.
I don't remember.
At Q Hill, you're saying, yeah?
The resolution was not, the resolution referred to a defined term that has to be, I have to look at it a little more closely. Anyway,
So in other words, all right, if we were to take it, the catch basin issue is something about the catch basins that we might not be responsible for? Is that what you just said?
Well, it's where the line is.
No,
let's, yeah,
do that, I don't know.
Where the line is?
let's,
Okay, all right.
No, I
don't
mean,
know what line you're talking about.
honestly, the goal of tonight was
Yeah,
to send it back to them, for them to decide whether they want to dedicate it or not under these
If
conditions.
they decide, no, we don't need to say.
Then there's no
say
reason-
word about it.
Right. If they do decide, then we'll deal with some of the drainage issues and figure out how that's all going to work and what the wording should be and, everything.
But what's clear from this is they don't know that they own the drainage right now, it seems like. They have not been maintaining it, obviously.
They didn't, we're not aware of it somehow.
But there definitely is some nebulous stuff going on here because the village has been assuming and maintaining the water and sewer system down that road, the main, not the laterals, of course, but just the main. I never saw a dedication of that specifically. And, we don't just pick up things and start maintaining it. So there's something happened, and I probably missed it in the documents, but at the end of the day, we're just going to, if this happens, it's got to get clarified, like from top to bottom, literally.
So we're maintaining everything
Yes.
underground, but we're not
Right.
maintaining anything on top?
Or the
No, we're not maintaining the storm drainage.
Or the electrical system,
Well,
obviously.
that's
The
that's
power system.
Yeah. So water and sewer we maintain, the mains.
Yeah.
Yeah. I asked Jim, I said, if there's a water main break right there, in the middle of this road, would you go out and fix it? And the answer is yes.
Now, that's different than the Dow's Lane water thing, where
Yes.
that's,
Yeah.
you totally know that from all
That's-
this information, that
that's
that's their
completely private.
private system, and
Yes.
they ask for that.
Yep.
It's a whole different thing.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so, discussion of leaf blower regulations. You invited Larry, by your neighbor.
All right.
So this is a discussion where we're revisiting, based on recent communication. Remind me of your name? Kathy. Kathy and others. It's certainly something that I remember over the years, and as late as, let's see, as long ago as 2014, we had a draft of a local law, and we didn't enact it, but the Green Policy Task Force picture at that point, and we asked them if they wanted to resolve a leaf blower thing, and they said they'd rather not involve any restrictions on leaf blowers at this time. That's what I'm remembering about this.
Right.
And so now it's back on the table based on recent communications. So the idea is now for us to discuss where we might want to go with this.
Right, so the draft that was done back in 2014, which I had attached to the agenda, I don't know if you saw the agenda online or not.
I did not.
Oh, anyway, it's the draft is, I probably pull it up. It basically just deals with the time of year restrictions, so eliminating any use of leaf blowers from
June 1st to September
June 1st
15th.
to September 15th, right?
Gas powered leaf blowers.
Yes, right,
I
exactly.
mean, that's
That's
the
important,
big
sure.
distinction between.
And there were a couple of exceptions, that being golf and tennis operations and municipal and school operations.
And state of emergency or something,
And emergency situations. Right.
after a major storm or whatever.
So that's where it was left off.
And there was a second part of the
Yes,
law,
go ahead.
that for the period that they can be used, from September 16th to May 31st, there were specific time periods that they could be used. It's pretty extensive, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, Saturday, Sundays, federal holidays, 9 to 4.
Now, I noticed there was a difference with comparison with different municipalities had different windows.
Oh, yeah.
So we can tighten that window is what I'm trying to say. is that-
Yeah, but some of it says, you know what I thought was kind of interesting, I looked, like, Hastings is much more restricted, they don't allow. But you know what you really have to think about
They don't
is,
allow any of
what
them.
are your type of properties, you know? Hastings, they have all little properties, you know, there's no big properties, you're dealing with two, like, very different, kinds of properties. There's a lot of small properties down here, and then there's, a lot of big estates, which don't exist in Hastings, certainly not many, but they don't allow them, they didn't allow them at all, and there was a big discussion. But interestingly, I thought, I'll look at Scarsdale, see what they do, because it's similar in the sense that there's a lot of big properties there too. And what Scarsdale had like the exact same dates. No, nobody shall use a gasoline powered blower in the village during the period from June 1st through September 30th, or maybe it was September 15th.
Why was June 1st chosen?
Because you gotta get spring cleanup done.
I know, but, I mean, spring cleanup's being done now, I would think.
Well, Yonkers stops it on the 15th.
Yeah, some have May 15th,
Right.
that's pretty common.
So,
Oh.
it's past the
I'm thinking-
last frost date, so,
Ardsley's May 15th.
so let's pull it back then, make it May 15th. I think the shorter, reducing the window is
Yeah.
better for everyone.
Right, and spring cleaning, if it's not done by May 15th.
So
I need help.
Speak for yourself, yeah?
if I can, I'm not disagreeing, but the White Plains one says that the use of gasoline-powered leaf blowers are allowed only during the spring and fall cleanup periods, and they call those periods March 15th to May 15th, and then fall, October 1st to December 15th. So they can be used then, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., Saturday, Sunday, and legal holidays, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
That's pretty close to what we have.
Yeah.
No, actually,
Can you
But
go
it
back
doesn't
to-
cover the winter at all, you know?
yeah, see, it's really, literally, it cuts out a swath.
Mhm.
Now, people are usually not out in the wintertime with leaf blowers, except if they're trying to blow snow, which I've seen.
The only other thing is your windows are closed. The problem with the summer is your windows are open and you hear the noise. That's why there's more focus.
I just don't even know if there's a reason to be using them between December 15th and March 15th, you know, but. Because when you would be using them would be in the late, early spring, when the weather gets up to 80 degrees like yesterday or whatever it was, and people got the windows open and the the leaf blowers are out like crazy in the last couple of days.
Today was like
Mary Ann, in our description of when it can be used, do we have any restrictions on how many can be used at any one time, or are there decibel limits on what can be used, or
I suppose
these
it's,
4 strokes versus 2 strokes?
no,
Well,
we don't have anything about one at a time. Let me look and see if there's regular noise provision.
Some of them, specify no more than 1 leaf blower on
I
property.
like that personally, but the problem is, a couple of things, just to answer your question, Margaret. It's supposed to be regulated through the county, through the home improvement license. And there's very specific stuff about, they have to be using 4-cycle, which are lower decibel and have the latest version of whatever it's called, phase 2 or something. It's got better muffler, it's got better particulate filtering.
And so that's specified by the county.
That's specified by the
So our assumption is that they're licensed by the county.
But the county, how much does it get enforced? They have to sign an affidavit or something that they in fact are using up-to-date equipment. But I gotta tell you, some of the things you see out in the field. See, there's 2 classes of leaf blowers that we should talk about separately, I think, and maybe not allow one in a period. There's the backpack one, and most of those, they only last so long and they're probably updated and whatever. But then there's the push-along ones
No, I know.
that have these big fans,
Yeah.
and that's the one that I just don't know that, I've never seen one that looks new at all. It's like, like a 1965 Volkswagen that's, we don't need the condition of it.
Fumes and
And what Mark is talking about from Westchester County, this thing that I just looked at today, number 13, all leaf blowers used in the course of business must meet EPA Phase 2 2007 exhaust emission standards. Now, this is apparently, if you want to function in Westchester County as a home contractor, which includes lawn care people, you have to go to Westchester County and get a license. And you have to put a bumper sticker displayed on the driver's side rear bumper of the vehicle to show that you are actually licensed in Westchester County to do this work.
But there's absolutely no enforcement in reality at the county level beyond an affidavit that states that you're conforming to whatever the regulations are. There's no other kind of thing. They don't send the county police around to check out if people are using out-of-date, leaf blowers.
If you put the same standard in yours, though, you could. I mean, I don't know if that's difficult.
we would just simply have to reference it, right? And that
Or
would give
adopt the
us
provisions,
our-
right.
So if you're being tortured by somebody's leaf blower, you can walk outside and see if they have the sticker on the.
Right, take a picture of the.
And if not, you can call and say, hey, these guys aren't displaying the appropriate county.
Well, that happens now. People can get ticketed
Yeah,
now
good.
by local police if you can complain if someone is unregistered. It's can be a fairly big fine for the operator.
But I think,
And it's supposed to be on the vehicle?
Yes. It's just, you always see it
people notice.
as,
Home improvement contractor or that.
you'll
type
see
of
it
thing.
WCIL or home improvement, Westchester County. You often see Westchester County and also Rockland. They'll have
Go on
So
this website.
if we incorporate the county standards, even by reference into our law, it'll just make it easier, I think, for residents to understand what's required.
So it seems like there's a number of things. It seems like we should talk about narrowing the window. It seems like the time frames. I mean, the White Plains one I sort of like actually because, maybe it's a little bit longer because they have Monday through Friday they have 10 to 6 and we have 10 to 5. But on Saturday and Sundays they have 10 to 6 and we have 9 to 4. I don't know about anyone else, but I prefer I think the 10 a.m. to going from 10 to 4 or 10 to 5 on Saturday and Sunday and holidays would be good. I think letting people have a break in the morning on the weekend or on a holiday is a good thing.
So you're saying 8 to 5 during the week is fine, but you prefer 10 to 4 on the weekends?
Yeah, I think so. I
White
think
Plains has 8 to 6 during the weekdays. Here.
And what's their weekend?
their weekend.
10 to 5, 10 to 6.
But they do have simultaneously operating more than one leaf blower on property measuring 5,000 square feet or less is prohibited. So that speaks to your two at once.
Yeah, you don't have many 5,000 square feet lots.
No, smaller, or measuring or less.
No, so if your property.
There's not a lot of those, yeah.
What?
No, I was just saying, there's not a lot.
Well, we
Oh,
could change
no,
the
if
size
they're-
of that.
if there's 5,000 square feet, they're downtown and they're probably not using leaf
Oh, they
blowers.
do though, right on the corner of
Okay.
Dutcher and.
But
Yeah.
it's, you're
Yeah.
leaving out all
Well,
the
make it-
10,000, 20,000 square foot,
Well, make that a little bigger.
a lot of lots. You
I
can
think-
get them out.
I think,
But
right,
I
I
think
think
it's
it could
bigger.
be
I think we
quite a
make a
bit
good
bigger,
point.
but you should get
Five
probably
is
in reference
small,
to our zones, like, you know, I have 10, I have 20, whatever.
No.
Why could you
Well,
do that?
because doesn't it make, isn't it the size of the lot
Lot,
that makes
not
sense? Because
Well-
you've got a lot of, maybe it's an RF20 district, but the lots are smaller, or the other way around, where it said you've got a great big lot and you happen to be in a one family 20, but you've got a giant lot, you know?
I guess the reason, yeah, I'm just wondering about, right, I was trying to think of ways people would, sure, never mind. I was trying to think of another, you know, like a proxy for lot size, you know, like so people
Yeah.
don't know their lot size or, because these people don't know, they're coming in.
Yeah, but I think most people would know that their lot is bigger than 10,000 square feet or 20,000
Oh,
square
probably,
feet,
yeah.
whatever it is. What?
I know how much property I own.
Yeah, I mean,
would think.
I don't know about square feet,
I
I
couldn't
know how
tell you
many,
what my,
part of an acre I have.
It's an easy conversion.
well, if
You're
that,
talking about, and this is gonna sound crude, you're talking about non-English speaking workers coming in to do work most of the time. They don't know what size the lot is, I guarantee you. So,
but the homeowner
But
would
it's the homeowner's responsibility.
responsibility to say, with a little card,
you can't use a blower.
right, on both sides, English and Spanish, maybe, this is the little card that says what the rules are here.
Now you're
If you wanna do that, or you just, the
Now you're
homeowner
asking-
calls the police, it's a violation, and the police come and see it.
you need something that's enforceable, you need something that can't be easily said, well, oh, I,
Yeah, but if a neighbor to go up to somebody else's crew, I don't care what language they speak, if I live next door to you and I walk it up to any employee of yours on your property to tell them they're doing something illegal, that's not really the best way to handle this.
that's what I'm saying.
Right, so.
Because
but
most of them will
it's-
just look at you
So
and say,
it's-
leave me alone.
It's the homeowner's
So
responsibility.
you call Mark.
Yeah,
She called
I
Mark.
call Mark, or I call you. But it's not a homeowner's responsibility to direct workers, you know, I don't care whether they're walking your dog, whatever. You know,
I mean, the the adjacent homeowner.
it's not the adjacent homeowner's responsibility to try and enforce
I
the law
agree.
on somebody else's property. So we have to be clear what we're asking. It sounds like I just want to make sure we have the concept, and we're just talking about details. We're talking about limiting it to particular areas of the times of the year.
And
We're
times of the day.
and talking times of the day, and we're talking about number and kinds of leaf blowers, right? Those are basically the three things.
On what's on every side, yes, but that's right.
Yeah,
And then we're deciding if we're going to change, if that is going to change at all, and I'm assuming times would not, but if the number and kinds of leaf blowers
Because
might
for
change
instance,
based on
as
the
an
size
example,
of the property.
I would say that unless you have a large enough property, I don't think you should be using those push behind blowers, because those are the noisiest and most polluting of all of them. So what we should do is like limit to a handheld blower or two, unless you have a very large property. Like something in Ardsley Park or Madison Park,
They describe.
I can
Yeah.
see that
I
they
know,
would
so
probably
it's-
want to have a larger blower in there so they could get, at least have some hope of getting done within an hour or so of, you know, blowing everything around.
I don't know.
You lost me at the beginning part. What are you saying?
What part?
The
I
very
said,
beginning, I understood which size properties you were talking about, but what were you saying?
I was saying we should limit the number of, we should limit to only using handheld, unless, the only exception I can see is those larger blowers may be useful on something like a larger property.
Well, what, I'm sorry, what kind of blowers are there that aren't handheld?
they're pushed behind, they're like
Could walk behind.
sideways
Look like
I've never
lawnmowers.
seen them.
Oh, they're all over, but you would use them like
Look like
on
a snowblower
Them
for a
such
walk.
big properties in my name,
I
sorry.
think you would use them like on Harriman's Keep, or you'd use them
Oh, okay.
in Matheson Park, or maybe Ardsley Avenue area.
And they're not, hang on a second, they're not banned by what the county says?
They may or may not be, but the point is that, you know, prove it.
Yeah, and you know what else? I
You know,
think
prove
you
that
should-
it matches.
I think your own law should have every requirement you
Yes,
want. You
yes.
shouldn't just rely on the county, because it's gonna get too confusing. So if there's something in the county, like, you should put in yours.
I don't object to the notion it's, you know, quite a large property and it's partly balancing of noise and time. If you can get it cleaned in an hour and a half with the big blower, and it's gonna take 4 hours with one handheld blower, you know, is it gonna bother you more to have a little noise for 4 hours or a lot of noise for?
Right.
This is, but I think there has to be some definition of within X distance of neighboring property, because everybody's property ends in somebody else's property, you know?
I agree with you, totally. I have no problem.
Do we have it on record or?
I always agree with you. So the thing is that I do like Connie's idea though, and it's something I was gonna hold until the end. We should have a card that we hand out or able to give out, the police can give out, homeowners, one side English, one side Spanish, what the regulations are.
Fine, but then it's a homeowner's responsibility to give that to their employees.
Yes, it is,
Yeah.
but it also, it puts them on notice that if
Absolutely.
you do not conform, and they can't say, well, we didn't know about it, because you give it to the person who runs the company when they come and have you sign the contract. Right?
And the
That
police
way,
obviously
they're on
knows.
notice.
That's fine, and then you give them the cards they can give to their employees, that's fine.
That's right. So anyways, I do agree with that, Connie. I was thinking about that last week, about how we should have something, because a lot of these things,
What's the card?
it's just,
Okay, it's
Just
the
the
idea of
information.
having a little explanation of what the law is
Okay.
that applies to lawn care professionals or whatever you call them.
and
And
one
you
side
explain
in
in little
English.
bullet points, you
One
can do
side
this,
is
this,
Spanish.
this, this, and the other side is just in Spanish, and you do this, this.
Do we have any data at all where, when, the effect on rates of lawn companies once this leaf blow? I mean, I know Mamaroneck said they didn't know it, but Mamaroneck also has had an effect for 12 years, so.
Well, we are just about the only municipality in the area that doesn't restrict.
So do we know how our rates compare with Dobbs's rates or?
No, because they'll argue about other things too. It's because, you know, if you, it's also how you maintain, like if you do love them and leave them or not with your leaves, or if you have to bag them, everything becomes a cost factor. I mean, we could get some lawn care company owners come in here and talk about those factors, but we actually had them come in and talk in the past.
We have.
Well, in terms of leaf mulching and bagging, yes, but not in terms of, most of the time, the argument about leaf blowers is, you know, how many people does it cost, you know, how much time or how many people does it take to rake?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the ultimate. But then you have this obsessive use where you have people blowing like one leaf down the
Chasing
street.
a leaf down the street.
So often.
Well, the other thing I don't like about the large blowers too is because they're much harder to manipulate the leaf pile. Every time I see a large blower being used around here, half the leaves are in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And like you can see it on Broadway, they're all over the middle of the street and, you know, then they sort of go back and dart to the cars as they try to blow it back in again. So it's actually, it becomes a public nuisance beyond just the noise law.
I think to Larry's point, if we were like in the vanguard of passing one of these, and the lawn companies were saying, well, we can't do business here because you're so out of sync with all the rules everywhere else, I think that would be a stronger argument. But now that there are so many of these, and obviously these companies have been going out of business, I mean, I have thought about that a lot, like how much does it affect business and how much is it, because, you know, it's always a balancing act, but it seems ridiculous.
It's really hard to believe that it would, because it's not like it's so fast when they do it. I watch them in the morning, because I work in the morning, and they're all over the
It's an assumption that that's what the
And I
homeowner
just
wants.
think if you had a rake, You could do it just as fast. My
Right.
husband does it with a rake and it doesn't take very long.
So I guess-
It's just, sometimes you miss a leaf. You
Oh,
do miss a
yeah.
leaf when you miss, you know, now and then, but.
My other question is, have we satisfactorily responded or know the answers to the Green Policy Task Force's objections or requests?
They just didn't want it
Yeah.
to, they were the one that originally asked us to work on a ban. And then they backed off once they wanted us to, I thought it was more important to get leaf bagging in place, and they didn't want to confuse the issue. Because both of them were coming up at the same time.
Yeah, we're successfully.
Except we were leaf bagging, but we're allowing leaf blowers during leaf bagging.
No, I think it was, they didn't want to interfere with the implementation of the leaf bagging
Not
process.
forever, right.
The leaf bagging
No, kind of the public
that's what
reaction.
that's what they wrote there.
As it was rolled out.
They were very concerned.
They talk about behavior changes for mulching leaves in place.
Right.
Right.
They wanted to encourage that.
As opposed to behavior.
They were very concerned about the public's acceptance of the leaf bagging process, or I should say the no pickup of the large pile
Right.
implementation that we did. And they felt that by, at the same time, having this new restriction on leaf blowers, that would potentially interfere with the successful implementation of the bagging.
But we're past
Or
that.
the
Yeah, no, no,
water under the bridge.
Yes.
And then
And
you
that's my
did
point.
right, then you did right to Nikki,
But there was no,
About,
about the sleep blower law.
All right,
And
and Nikki
so there
has a
wasn't any-
No.
She got back to me this week.
yeah, she,
Green Policy Task Force.
Right.
just as an individual.
Nikki
because-
direct.
She got back to you saying what? Okay.
Just what he just said, which was they had wanted to pass it, they thought it was gonna be too much politically speaking
right,
at the time.
and Nikki, just as an update, right before the meeting, said that she wouldn't be able to make it to the meeting and was still hoping that there'd be an opportunity for comment, which I said, of course,
Yeah,
there's
no.
no, you know, that's really it. So it's not, by them not being here or saying anything doesn't mean they've approved everything you're doing here.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
But in general, I
still
believe
don't-
that they're anxious to not have the noise and the blowing of the topsoil and the effect that.
I wouldn't speak for them, given what they said the last time.
But
But I think now it's politically, you know, it's not politically advantageous not to be doing this at this point. I mean, they were saying that they thought it wouldn't be politically
Yeah,
advantageous.
this is how long ago?
Right.
But
Yeah, well,
not because they didn't, no, but I remember.
Yeah, I know. So
It wasn't that they didn't believe that there were negatives of having leaf blowers. They did believe there were negatives. I remember this discussion with, not every
Okay, so
member.
what are we doing here?
All right, anyway, wait.
We all agree, now's the time to do it, so let's get
Okay.
back to the details.
So if we're drafting the law, okay, do you want to leave it the way it is, or do you say that you can't do it for this period, or you can only do it?
Well, I mean, we got all those, didn't we have all those notes, so you were taking notes of what we've been talking
I
about?
don't know what
Yeah,
you said.
right.
I,
I hope you're
I don't know what
kidding.
you said.
Certainly pushing it
Well, no, no.
May.
I don't know, because I thought there's a great.
And the only thing, there was a question about whether we were gonna stick with the general, most of the regulations specify you can only use them between, or you can't use them from, or if we're gonna break out and have two periods when they were
We
allowed to
did
use
change
them.
one date, we changed.
Yes,
May
we changed
15th,
what
right.
they- my own opinion is that it's a whole lot less complicated if you just ban them from to instead of from this to that and then again. And
Fine,
then,
but how about hours now? Daytime, weekend?
okay, so wait, before we get, so I would be in favor of May 15th through September 15th. They're both 15. It's
Agreed.
nice, it's even, it's, you know.
It's odd, but who cares?
I agree with you that the 10 o'clock on the weekends, nobody wants to get up if they don't have to, so 10 a.m. But then I'm not sure if we can limit it to 4. Maybe then we should make it 10 to 5 on the weekends.
Some places don't allow it on Sunday at all, so, you know. I don't know, but, you know, you want it done in time for people to have the barbecues outside, so when do
Okay,
people-
so 10 to 4, let's say then 10 to 4.
on which?
on Saturdays?
Saturday, Sundays,
And otherwise 8 to 5.
otherwise 8 to 5.
Yeah, and then the other question, it seems to me the other open question is.
Can I say my point on this before we go away from the dates? I actually like the White Plains one better, but if I like March 15th to May 15th, and then October 1st to December 15th. I think, just let it, it's only, the way it's described, only during spring and fall cleanup. But if others think differently, I'm not gonna fall on my sword.
I don't really care. I think there's, psychologically, I think there's a good reason. I mean, this is kind of clear that you have a justification to fall on spring cleanup. I don't know what the big argument is to allow them to be used during the winter time.
The reason that you included that,
Forbidding more time.
All I've heard is that some people use it as in lieu of a snow blower,
yes, that's what you heard.
effectively, right? They blow off the
No, yeah,
walkways.
you had someone from Half Moon South tell you that.
And we said they could do that.
No, well, the way it is now,
Responding to
yes.
Emergency or removing snow, so I would be happy to leave that in there.
We should say removing snow.
It's on this, at the bottom line. B2.
No, well, those were the,
No, that's the hour, that's only the time limit. No, if you,
Okay, we'll put it somewhere else then. That was so that during the
no, they'd be
September.
banned. They would, if,
they would be banned,
Under-
except for those 2-month periods.
Yeah.
right. So the snow provision that you have here wouldn't apply. The snow provision that's here is only there so that it doesn't make the time limits applicable
Okay,
to
well then
it.
put in a snow, you can do the snow thing, put it in somewhere else so that we can make sure that Caesar is
No, this
okay.
is, the time limitation shall not apply in the following situations: when removing snow. If you leave out the connecting words, it allows snow removal.
Yeah, but the basic question is, what's the structure of your ban or you're allowing the leaf blowers? We have a difference of opinion, so.
Okay, well, maybe you should all right,
I
Well,
like
I'm lost.
March
What, do we-
15th and
So,
then
so the choice is
Do we want 2 windows of
yeah,
allow-
and it's allowed,
allowance?
2 windows of allowing it or 1 window
of the whole
where,
winter.
not allowing it.
right.
So the 2 windows of allowing it actually restrict the time more.
Or whatever
Well, the
restricting
number
we
of
want to do, yeah.
Yeah, the number of days, yeah, sure.
Yeah, it restricts it more,
When you say
right,
time,
because
I know
it's
what
no
you mean.
winter.
The 2 restriction dates will prohibit it for a longer period of
Like,
time.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm more in favor of that.
Well, so this is effectively from May 16th through October 1st, you can use it. And then, I mean, that's the restriction.
Because the winter is all added in here.
May 16th through.
I mean, after,
You can use it October 1st to what, December 15th?
Yep.
And March 15th to May 15th.
And that's it.
and that's it.
Where under ours as written, you can use it from September 15th to May 15th.
All right, so what are the 2 periods that's allowed? March 15th to May 15th, and
October 1st to December 15th.
Under the White Plains law.
So the,
September 15th.
yeah,
That's what
if
we're
we're gonna do
thinking
that,
about.
we should say
That's what we're
September
thinking
15th,
about.
because leaves start falling.
yeah, I think
Oh, so
everything's
change
fine.
October to September.
I'd be fine with that if we're gonna
Yeah,
do
it
with
did.
the
All right.
windows.
Oh,
So
they
the
did
only
it
question I
15th.
have
And I
is,
would want to call it spring
September
cleanup and
15th.
fall cleanup in the law, so
Yeah.
it makes it clear what our intention is.
I think you're right.
And make it more understandable for the people.
All right, that's good, we use the
Definitely.
simplicity of the 15-15.
Yeah.
So the only thing I want to ask is that going to help? We've gotten complaints now,
Yeah.
wherein, we were getting complaints in March and now in April.
Right.
About,
I agree, I wondered about that.
about the use of the, leaf blowers, and they would be operating in, right now, those complaints would have been okay because they're operating in the window that we're proposing.
Well, but-
In either case.
This is spring cleanup time, so then the question is, are we restricting the hour of leaf blowers?
And the number,
With the number of
And the-
windows.
the type and number is the next question, isn't it?
So,
No,
No,
But
we're not,
we're not there yet?
not totally done with this one, because you were talking about the snow exception. So, it snows on January 1st. You're not allowed to blow it.
Right.
Do you want it that way, or do you want an
Yeah.
exception for
No,
snow?
I think you, well,
I think
I
the
don't know,
large
for-
I
properties.
don't be so quick to say, I mean, there's
yeah,
certain,
because
there's
this is
certain
what came it
homeowners.
up with Caesar and Half Moon.
Yeah.
That, just to get it off quickly before it's, so heavy that you're shoveling it.
Right,
It was
especially
blowing
the
it.
kind of snow that easily blows. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
principle of those, if you buy one of those snow blowers
Yeah,
in Walmart or wherever.
it's like a snow blower, only it's a leaf blower.
People are not gonna generally go outside in the middle of a storm or even after it to use a snow blower, a leaf blower,
Not
except
generally.
if they've got property management.
Yeah, exactly.
To clear a walkway.
So we're not making a
So I
problem
don't
for a
think-
lot of people by allowing it for blowing
They're
snow
not,
off the
they're,
sidewalks.
they're not blowing snow off the yard. They're
No,
blowing
but I,
Hopefully.
but I think the way it's written, I think the way B is written, it allows you to use it, because no, the time limitations shall not apply to the use of leaf blowers in the following situations: when responding to an emergency or removing snow. So I think it permits it, I think we're fine.
Well, would you,
No, not the way it's written, no.
you could change the time to
The time,
the date and time, if you put date and time.
Well, we don't have,
well, hold on,
Mary Ann will fix,
hold
as long
on.
as we know
We'll-
what.
How will we do this?
It's not really that the time limitations won't apply. You would need, go back to 9A, but you've got 2 periods where it is permitted, okay? And you've got, and I assume you want to keep the exception for golf and tennis operations in municipal and school, okay? And when responding to an emergency. There's where you would add.
And clear.
And clear snow.
Snow.
Okay, so just move, okay.
Yeah, the
Just
time
move
restrictions,
snow up
right.
to number 2, okay, fine.
Okay, now there's another thing that I just want to
So
mention.
are we okay on the dates now? It's
Yes,
the-
we've got,
Okay,
two videos
I
and
just didn't
15
know
up.
it.
So we changed the dates, we changed the times, we made sure the snow
On the
exception.
times, I'm not sure we're done with the times. I just want to say that, thinking about it being in the middle of spring cleanup, all the way from Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., the mothers and the toddlers and the problems we heard about, that's still allowed as long as it's only one, if we do the one. But it's still, it gives you no break for an entire day, Monday to Friday. You can listen during that spring cleanup. It could be nonstop all day.
And someone could be building a house nonstop all
I
day
know.
next door.
All right, but for that many months, and everybody was concerned.
House building can take
I
6
know,
to 8
but
months
it
or
could take
more.
years.
But I think the point that you were getting at in the previous law was May 15th or June 1st through September 15th. You don't want them then because that's when windows are open and the noise
Right,
is
it
going
does
to be
get
worse.
worse, but
If you're talking March 15th to May 15th or September 15th, well, actually,
Right, we have to change that date.
to December 15th, it's, no, you did change the date. It wasn't October 1st. You
Yeah.
changed it to September 15th.
Less of a length.
Less likely that the
Not zero,
windows are
but
gonna
less
be
of a likelihood.
open, or that you're gonna be playing in the yard.
Well, this is what
Devil's
we heard, but we heard from Kathy and others.
About
was-
today.
You should speak.
Yeah, I
This is
just,
what happened to us today. Our neighbor on Station Road had the Five Brothers leaf people there. They had 3 men with leaf blowers, 8 to 9:30. My kids came inside. My kids are always outside. They're very loud. They had to come inside. We had to close all the windows. They couldn't hear their own television show. Then on Maple Street, we had the same company. They seem to do our whole neighborhood. Across the street from us, they were there from 2:30 to 4:30. So that's 3 hours out of the day. My son, my 5-year-old, held his ears. He said, "I want to go to the park. It's too loud. It's too loud." Like, we can't be in our yard.
Do you know if they were there with more than one leaf blower?
They were. All 3 times. So they went to one house, then they did the neighbors, because they worked for the same company. So the other thing is that the proximity to the neighbors is an interesting idea too, because I measured today, because I knew I was coming to the meeting tonight. So from our driveway to the 2 men using these leaf blowers was less than 20 feet. So I mean, in my situation, which is different than like a huge estate, obviously, with like 8 acres, we live on an 1/8 of an acre or whatever it is. We really are like right there. I mean, it's from here to the window, these men were using these things, and my kids are trying to play in the driveway, and they're wearing earwear. So I do think, I don't know, that's just an example. I mean, that's an example of an April day when it was 70 degrees out and we did have our windows open and we had to close them. You know, and we've had cruddy days in April, but certainly by May 15th, you're gonna have nice days.
Yeah, so it's the amount of time, even during that cleanup time, that there's no break. There's no break from 12 to 1, there's no break, it's just all day.
Tell them when they can.
Yeah, I don't know if I can even say, I mean, I saw ours, he says, blowers and leaf blowers shall not be operated on any property in the village for a period of more than 30 minutes per day. Just on one property for 30 minutes, and it goes to the next, to the next, to the
Yeah, but
next.
that's,
but even
that's,
that,
that could cut
That
down,
would be a lot better for.
except when they're doing the whole neighborhood. You know, and then what happens is,
Yeah, but they actually, I should say they do allow them most of the time.
Right.
I don't mind allowing a restriction on the length of time at particular properties, but I don't know if that's,
Oh, that's so, I just think that's very unrealistic and how you're gonna enforce that. And, you know, some properties, you know, are more hilly or have more, you know, plants that they gotta get under. And
I know it's a problem in solving it, I'm just bringing it up because if I were a young mother now, I would have that same thing.
Size property,
I thought of
you know,
that.
properties, you know,
I'm happy with
below
that.
X number of
Is
thousand
1
feet, you
acre
can only have one.
reasonable? I mean, most people know whether they've got an acre or not.
1 acre's big.
Knickers are.
I'd
You
say,
think for an acre you should be allowed more than one? Okay.
I think, I do.
I can't picture
I'd say,
nothing in my neighborhood.
I think
I'd say a half acre
Or
or maybe somewhere in there.
I mean, and I think people would know whether they have half acre lots or not.
Half acre is probably the small, I mean, somewhere between a half acre and acre. An acre seems big to me
Okay.
at this point.
So what do you suggest, Matt? Properties under half an acre shall use no more than one hand,
Period.
one backpack leaf.
You would
Yes.
say you can only use one leaf blower at
One
a time.
backpack leaf blower,
Right.
Are you gonna ban the other ones altogether? We have to
hopefully
talk
except
about that. Wait a
on
minute.
large estates.
Right. So, okay, so for properties,
Oh, we could, can I throw one thing in before? If we want to really regulate those big ones, I don't know how we do it. Let me just throw this out, and I know Larry's gonna get acid indigestion. But the point is, you would disallow them except by exception. They have to come in and show that they are, you know, a phase 2 EPA compliant blower, and then you give them permission to use it.
a lot of time in the office, right?
My concern is that we limit one leaf blower to the neighborhoods that are really affected by the noise, which is mostly,
Yeah, I know.
you know, right here off of all the properties off of Main Street, Sparrow Park,
Mine.
your name, Jaffrey Park. I mean, and none of those are more than half acre, are they?
I think,
Well,
no, I don't think they're.
Let me give a counter to that. I've been going crazy in the last few days with the amount of, and the properties to my south are all under half acre.
Right.
The properties around me are all over an acre.
Right?
And then there's apartment complexes, and then there's, I don't know, but
look, the bottom line is.
it's
when-
going from one street to, one house to the next, and it's the same crew, and you
And
get,
it's the same leaves.
It's the same leaves.
I know that.
Blow
So-
them onto the next guy and then walk around there and blow them.
I would say only allow the backpack ones, but then you're gonna
Is
have
that a term of art, backpack leaf blower? Do you know what they're called?
backpack leaf blowers, that's,
They are?
Yeah.
Okay.
the point is though, yeah,
Handheld?
Yeah.
No, or, I mean.
Backpack handheld.
That's, or handheld.
so,
Yes.
I mean, it's basically, they're always up strapped on, they don't really try to carry them too long because
But
they,
if we, so you're saying
the problem
for
is.
larger than half acre properties, you still only want by exception to be able to use something other than a.
I don't know, I'm trying to throw out a thing that, I have no particular dog in the race, I don't know what to do, but at some point, we have to probably allow the larger units.
Right, well, if we only specify that less than half an acre can only use one,
one of
That
this
implies
type,
that
and
more
then
than half the acre can use whatever they would.
If they have 7, it's okay.
No, see, I don't think that's right.
I mean, it's a practical matter, it's not gonna happen,
They're not
I don't think I've ever seen
No,
one.
because, right, they won't change what their behavior is on the larger properties, they'll still do what they do now on the larger
And
properties.
it's not solving the problem, it might be solving for Sparrow Park and for those neighborhoods, but it's not gonna be solving it for other neighborhoods like, you know, my neighborhood or Sycamore, Dogwood Lane, those
Those
neighborhoods.
properties are more than half acre?
I bet you a lot of them are.
I
some of them
don't
are.
think so.
But it again depends on the message is situated, because even if you have a part, and I don't know what mine is off the top of my head, but it's not like in town, so it's a little bit bigger. But when my backyard's next to my neighbor's backyard, so I can go out there with my cup of coffee and my dog and my book, and her quick comments, and bam, so in we go. You know, and I don't know how you know, that's just our backyards are back to back. You can't fix it all, is the bottom line here.
Yes, yes.
What is reasonable that allows businesses to conduct their businesses? We can't demand that all lawn companies shut down between 12 and 1, you know, because your kids ready to too, you know, it's just, and you want, so it's just what is reasonable? So I think what we're talking about here is one handheld leaf blower limit on properties of less than a half an acre. Properties up to, and let's make a limit, I don't know, if 2 acres is reasonable, can have 2 handhelds.
What are the numbers for that?
they only do 5,000 square feet or less, and
Yeah,
Marion's.
I know, I would worry about the,
That's White Plains, and they probably do have some really tiny.
But they probably have really big ones too.
Yeah, they do, I'm sure they do.
If you've got, you know, an estate and somebody's blowing leaves in the middle of your estate, nobody is gonna know or care, you know?
So
I'm
what
just worried about what that middle window is and whether, you know, is a half acre or should it be like 3/4 acre? You know, so I don't know where the line is. Maybe there's only one line if we get the neighborhoods right. Do you know what I'm saying? Rather than having 3 levels,
Yeah, agreed.
it'd be simpler, but
If we said half acre, and then we take a look at how much of the village that covers, is that hard to do, to figure out,
no, we should be able to do that, right?
like, I don't know the little,
I'd have to ask our engineers, I don't do the GIS thing.
okay.
It's pretty simple to do that. Once you have the property maps, you can, it's just an equation to say, show me
Maybe
everything within
Greenberg can do
a
it.
certain number of square feet.
5,000 square feet is 1.24 acres.
No,
No, it's not.
5,000 square feet
No, it's
is an eighth of an acre.
An acre is 43,255.
5,000 square feet is an acre.
Don't believe
See if you can find 49 inches.
5,000 about an eighth of an acre.
It's an eighth.
An acre is
About.
about 40, so the 40,000 square foot lot's about an acre, 20,000, yeah.
So I would say half acre is a good starting point, but it would be nice if we could get a map back from,
But we also, because you're gonna have blocks that have different size lots, I think we should just decide what seems reasonable. Half an acre is small enough that I think confining it to one handheld leaf blower for something that size or less is eminently reasonable.
Absolutely think so,
Okay.
and I
So
think
why don't we
one
start
could be
there and
measured
leave it at that?
because
What, instead of trying to,
Yeah.
one and a half leaf blowers for.
Right, and as we gotta have a
I gotta
public
tell you,
hearing,
the properties right next to me
You
are
can
only in
Essentially
5
what it's saying,
acres.
if it's a
So,
small,
right,
it's a
but
fairly
that's
small
the
one,
exception to the
one
rule.
Right.
What
It
is
doesn't, it doesn't protect your particular
Or
house, but
anyone
it still
in the
protects.
Sycamore, on the Sycamore Lane,
Only from those houses. Everybody in Sycamore Lane is gonna be a half acre or less.
no, I know that, but I'm saying, for talking about neighborhood noise level, there's probably 20 or 30 houses affected by those 2 properties, so you can't just say it's just a minor thing, it's
No, I'm not saying it's a minor thing, but I'm saying it's only 2 houses that are not.
creating the problem
Right.
for everyone else in the neighborhood. But then we have to talk about what to do with the things like the condo developments and the apartments, because they are also excessive leaf blowers.
Right, and they use it to clean off their driveways and their parking lots and things like that, right? So
Yes.
they would have an argument to even be using it during the ban times.
Anytime.
Well, we'll hear about it. I mean, this is what happened the last time.
Why should the apartment buildings get to use it?
No, I'm not saying, I'm just saying
Well,
that
they don't want to.
they're gonna
No, they don't.
be against it.
But, you know, we have to listen,
We'll hear about
you know.
And the properties,
Well, look, I-
properties are always bigger than half an acre, right, so they get to use more than
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Much bigger than half an acre.
No, but not during the ban time.
No,
So look,
So
we're
why don't
gonna
we start
draft
with this? I like
something and
this.
have public hearings,
Yeah,
right? And public-
absolutely.
Do we want to give any kind of exception for hardship case, like when they can come in and get a special exception? And
What's
then-
an emergency?
Well, it's not an
Well,
emergency,
that's not an
this is
emergency.
different, this is like, we're Cedar Hill Apartments, and we clean, our driveway and walkways if we
Yeah,
need.
I think you can ask for a variance, or would it be a variance?
No,
Just an
not
exception.
variance, no.
Just an exception.
Well, for what it's worth, but remember in Hastings, they're not allowed at all, but if there was an exception that if a village resident or property owner has a medical condition requiring a leaf blower to clean up leaves and other yard debris, and presents the village manager with a letter from the physician stating that such medical necessity exists.
No.
I'm sorry,
But
but
that's a different
That's not
situation.
true.
No. My point here is not that particular exception, because it doesn't make sense, but it is something that
A
the
medical
village manager
exception
could
doesn't
do.
make sense.
and I'm not a village manager.
No.
Do you think?
The exception, no, because remember, they ban any kind, electric, anything, everything was banned.
In Hastings,
All time?
everything?
No.
Okay,
No,
what do
no,
you,
between October 5th.
So all the condo developments in Hastings during that time period are not allowed to use?
I guess not.
Okay.
If it's
Well,
a
the bottom
I
line
mean,
is,
I'm
there are
comfortable
going
with
to be leaf blowers. And if we limit it to one per property, so let's just take an imaginary street in Irvington where there are 5 houses on each side of the street, right? Right now, you've got 3 leaf blowers on this one, they take a half an hour, then they go 3 leaf. So now you're gonna have one at a time, but taking longer. And you're still gonna have 3 leaf blowers going, because they're gonna be on 3 different properties instead of one taking 3 times as long. It's not gonna it might alleviate it to some extent. Nothing's gonna completely fix it. If you live in close proximity to your neighbors, you're gonna hear leaf blowers. We can limit time, we can limit type, we can try to put, just reasonable restrictions
how about if we just make everyone,
by a rate.
no,
Free
asphalt
rakes in
over the lawn,
Irvington.
cut down all the trees, so we just have like parking lots everywhere.
Yeah, see, I mean,
That would solve the
There's
problem.
a,
but I think that we can't
There's one
overly
other thing I
restrict
wanna
the
ask
time, so we
Martha.
can't call a lunch hour, that becomes just unwieldy and unmanageable.
But do you think you think we don't need a medical exception of some
I
sort?
just-
Or the ability to get an exception of some sort? Would it,
Well, you can still use an electric blower.
Yeah, we're not, that thing, I mean, there's
Okay.
other means to.
Yeah, you can use.
high enough fine? That was the other thing.
Wait, let's just listen,
There's
fine
one
here
other
was-
thing.
Yeah.
What about that thing that you're talking about, the great big powerful leaf?
Yeah.
Do we have to? Can
Those
we-
things, I personally think they should be disallowed, period, but you're gonna get a lot of pushback from a lot of the workers they have one guy with that, and the other 2 guys are satellite guys with the handheld ones. And what they do is they sort of, the big thing is pushing them kind of in general, and the other ones are on the outside kind of
Oh,
corralling them
okay,
in.
so I guess, because we say on, if it's a half acre or less, you can only have one.
By not saying
handheld,
anything else, we're not
And then the other thing
disallowing
is
it.
people could have it, okay.
I do think we should have a noise thing, because those older ones usually are quite noisy, and I know the police won't enforce it, but at least could we,
Did I see it?
I think that we should put something in any regulation that we can't measure.
we're in some, but
The
it's,
decibel stuff is really hard, like,
Yeah.
where do you measure it from?
Right.
right next to it.
by whom?
By next-
There's a phone app, I've got 2 decibel apps.
All right, so you're gonna go around town and measure decibel levels of leaf blowers. Okay, Mark, put that in the letter.
If it's repeatable,
No chance.
we'll get a decibel meter then.
Well, right.
And $200.
Yeah.
What?
No, we've avoided that from top to bottom in our code, because it gets completely unwieldy, so I think.
And how do we
if
get rid
implement
of
it here-
those big pigs? Unless we just outright say.
Get rid of them. Just get rid of them. Stop trying to slice the thing to the core. Just, if you don't want them, get rid of them.
What are we talking, big leaf?
Yeah.
Put it in the draft and let's
Yeah,
see what
yeah.
happens, all right? And we'll, what
You'll-
do you call it?
No, just say backpack.
Non-backpack.
that we
leaf blower.
You're saying all together.
No, wait,
Because trying to slice it's just not, it's not
No,
going to
no.
be effective. that's all.
which thing are we talking about?
The
The
big
big
leaf
ones.
blowers.
All right,
The
what
big
are they,
push
No
ones.
big, I.
No big leaf blowers.
what are they called?
Big
Yes,
leaf
I mean-
blowers.
No, I don't think so, and I don't think those other ones are called big leaf blowers. Are they? Okay, so the other one's called
And
quick.
we call them
But
push.
please let us remember, we also have lawnmowers. People are mowing lawns with ride-on lawnmowers, you know.
We
people
have
are
snow
noisy
blowers.
too. We have snow blowers, they're noisy too.
But your
We have
windows are
birds,
shut.
they make a ton of noise.
I know those damn birds. But I do agree with you. Let's just leave it alone and see. if-
Yes, let's keep it simple with the end, that
All
sentence
right.
being used.
I think you're right. I mean, people do have riding mowers and they can be quite loud and blah, 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 blah.
Okay, wait, and what do you want the fine?
Well, I don't know,
This,
the fine
what claims is penalty may be a fine up to $250.
it's got to be a fine that has some teeth in it.
Yeah.
$5 fines. I'll be there. Continue. We're gonna make sure that they can do it on your property though. Okay.
Okay, so we're,
No, did we get a fine?
250 sounds reasonable.
And then, let's see, leaf blowers.
Fine of 250, and we specified it the homeowner, right? Who gets fined?
Oh, who gets the fine? Aha.
Well, if you give it to the homeowner, it's gonna stop a lot faster because
I think it should be the,
Well, if the homeowner, if we are telling the homeowners this is law, we are giving the homeowner the palm cards to give to their
Yes,
company.
as well as the police.
So then the company is ignoring the direction of the homeowner who may not be home when this is happening. I don't know. On the other hand, the homeowner's more likely to actually pay the fine, the company.
Well, that's fine.
It will make it their business to
And
make
pretty,
sure that.
pretty quickly fire that company.
Yeah, well, unless they have a contract with the kids, they can't immediately.
so interesting.
How do the others do it? I mean, how do others,
I don't see him anyways.
who's pays the fine? Let's see, have your landscapers reacted to the fine?
There's nothing in the law.
So banners will do. There's a sense of the current fine, wait, no, there's a sense the current fines are too low and not enough of a deterrent. This is Mamaroneck. The town sustainability collaborative is requesting that the town consider an amendment to the ban that would require a minimum fine of $150 for the first offense, progressively higher mandatory fines for repeated violators. But it doesn't say who pays it. What do you think? Usually,
I think it actually should go.
What do we think? Who should?
The homeowner.
The homeowner, you're responsible for what happens on your property, and if you get a fine, maybe we should not make it $250, maybe we should start with $100.
And then for the first time, and then 250.
And then $250 after that for any recurring offenses, because the first time that homeowner gets $100, they're gonna scream and yell at the landscaper and take it out of their pay. And that's not onerous on either side of that.
we're talking about who pays the fine. And it seems like,
I can't get those companies. I would say the homeowner, and
Yeah, I
it's
think
up
so.
to them to work it out with
Yeah.
the company.
So $100 first offense, then $250 for recurring offenses. So the homeowner's getting a big percent in the head to fix this and don't let this continue.
So the other thing is, can I just bring this up, and I hope that, I like the hand cards, which not only talk about the regulations, but there's some rules of etiquette, and I'd almost like to have the problem be that, I'll say it, and then, we'll figure out what it means. It would be nice to know that if people complain about a particular company or crew continually violating aspects of the etiquette, that they could be fined for it. In other words, the guidelines have some kind of backing if it's a repeat offense. They're not just, oh, this is nice to do.
But there's a complete disconnect between enforceability and etiquette. If it's etiquette, by definition, you can't enforce it.
Etiquette is the polite way of saying it, but if it is something you're receiving continual complaints about, and I gotta say, I understand this, because I see it, I have it happen every time that people come to and I've complained to the neighbors about it, they come to work on the properties, not all of them, but a bunch of leaves end up in my driveway, because they're blowing down the common driveway, and they don't look to see what goes to the side. So after one of them come and do their lawn care, either on Donatos or whatever, I have a shitload of leaves, that's a technical term, at the end of my driveway. So to me, that's, if it's a repetitive thing, I could say to the cops, I could call up and say, blah, 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 just did this. And if they hear about it a few times, then the company gets a ticket, I don't know.
Is there any way in
Isn't
which
there
that's
any law
a
that's
violation of something else? They were trespassing or they were,
It's not
I don't know, is
trespassing,
there
it's
some other thing that?
Also, one person that a random 5 leaves is one thing, a big shitload is another thing, but it's in the eye of the beholder, the blower, the recipient to it, and sometimes it's, like those dreaded clamshell things that everybody puts in the recycling bin, everybody puts them on top and they all blow out of the recycling bin and wind up in my bushes. Every week it happens all the time. And somebody's throwing them, but it's just, I don't know how you,
It's life with other people, I guess.
But, you could, if you thought about it, the other thing is, for instance, here was the etiquette rules that I came up with.
Well, yeah,
From talking to the landscaper, so, the shortest time is not finable, I understand that, but it just says no unnecessary idling of equipment, that could be, finable, just like if we wanted to enforce the county 3-minute or 5-minute idling for, vehicles could be enforced. This is one where people just basically sit there with them idling as they decide which next property to go to. They don't even turn them off. So anyways,
we're talking about a leaf blower law. I don't know if we can,
well, that is
we're
legal.
talking the trucks, right?
No,
Idling
No,
on
I'm
the
saying-
machine, you leave it out. Yes, this is what he's talking about.
And then-
Leave to comply.
there's just the etiquette that if you're within a certain distance of someone who's walking or sitting on an adjacent piece of property, you don't blow the leaves right in front of them and into their face, which is what happens.
Well, that happens, right, that happens on the little side streets that kids.
So there's certain kinds of things that if you have repetitive complaints, that it's not even a matter of etiquette, it's a matter of personal health as well.
They're all good points, and they're all, I've seen almost everything you've talked about, and I don't know that we can incorporate, my opinion would be, I don't think we can incorporate it into the law at this time. If we start here and we start changing the behavior of the way that homeowners deal with these companies, and they're now being a little more selective on the kind of company.
There's only one thing that's gonna change, only one behavior is gonna change by this set of regulation. None of this behavior that the real complaints about are gonna change. It's just gonna change if they happen to run the blower outside of 2 windows of time. But the idea that you can be totally careless, blow your leaves out in the middle of the public right of way, or, whatever it is, how do we change that unless there's some negative,
Can I make a suggestion that this is a somewhat different topic, and we've been on this one for quite some time, and we have another large agenda item that we think about this, but,
this has been, actually, no, I don't want to stop on this, because this has been in the paperwork for a while, so we're talking about making a change. Do we want to have anything that, besides giving a card, we're going to give a card about etiquette and rules or whatever to the homeowner who's going to hand it out, but it has no teeth in it beyond the hours of operation.
So the part that I thought would affect, maybe you don't think this does, but let's say this homeowner has hired a company that does all these bad things. They also break the rule, they get a fine, and the homeowner's now paid $100, and they're angry at this company, and they're saying, I'm gonna find a company that functions better. Maybe next year I can't break my contract, boy, I'd sure like to, you've caused me this problem, why don't we just end this? I wanna find a company that really functions well on all these things. And now you're encouraging them to hire somebody more like the companies who would never do this.
So I'm going to take a different tack one more time at this, because this kind of behavior etiquette-based thing is the only way a neighbor can actually bring a complaint outside of the time of operation. But if the neighbors are having problems with, excessive idling, excessive use, or being used too close to them for, which you brought up, that they're so close. I mean, I don't know. So in other words, this is a handle where someone could in fact say, you know, they're breaking the village guidelines.
Well, you could put the how close to another property in here pretty, I mean, that's a specific measurable thing.
Yeah, but some of the properties are so close to
Then
each
you
other.
end up, right, I like that. Make it
You
only
reach out the
show.
window and
Right.
Mark, isn't, I know what you're saying, but it's just hard to figure out how you would do it by regulation and like how many things you actually wanna to regulate.
Can we just incorporate in the guidelines? Can we, no, okay, never mind, I take it back, I think that's a good representative.
No, but this seems to me as the sort of thing you should be able to talk to your neighbor about. I mean, it's, I think that's what I would do is
Not talk
just
to
go to my
the
neighbor.
leaf blower themselves, but to
To
say,
say to the neighbor,
look, and leave it there and say, look, this is what happened when you guys came through, can you just,
because a lot of them aren't that bad. Like I said, I walk an hour every morning and they're always all out. And I would say most of the guys seem pretty good. I walk by, they stop their blowers.
really, you should send them over into my neighborhood.
no, I agree,
No, I
I
see
think it's
that.
an experience.
Yeah.
Or if they don't hear me, that, you know, when they see me, they're like, oh, sorry, and they turn it off.
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't see it as that huge a problem. I mean, and it seems that if there was somebody who was really difficult, you would go to the homeowner. Yeah, to the property owner and say, you know, your guy is doing this.
I think we have a good start on something that is
Yeah.
a reasonable and enforceable regulation, and I think this is where we should limit it.
Okay,
At this point.
the only thing I'm gonna bring up of Mark's points is, I'll just throw it out once more, is there anything about how close you can function on the edge of the property or not? Is that just,
You can't blow leaves off the edge of your property. I mean, you can only blow leaves in the interior portion of your property.
it's like simple the wagons. And then get a rake for the rest of
No, I
it.
think that's, I don't think we can do that. I think
All right, I
this
give up
is
on it.
relatively simple, and this could actually make a difference.
Um,
All right, so where do we go?
I'll draft
Jeff?
Yeah. I'll draft something and, I don't know, should I circulate it first or? I think we came to agreement. I think we pretty much came to agreement.
Well, I think that in terms of educational handout card, these kind of things should be on it.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
change some kind of behavior just by
No,
osmosis.
I mean, we're drawing attention to this, just like the water conservation thing, we can put them in the,
Yeah, or
The
it could
water
be, I
bill.
mean, part of, you know, it could be distributed in lots of other ways, like, you know, an email from the village, just remember during, you know, during leaf
Oh, yeah,
blowing
I mean-
season, observe these etiquette guidelines. Sure.
think of
Just
how
to
much
keep in mind.
behavior we changed with the love them and leave them. I mean, a lot of that was education, a lot of it was this, you know, the signage and, right?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, could there be some language in the guidelines sent in an email about, you know, there is guidelines for the ETA. The leaf blowers do make a certain amount of noise, they shouldn't be within this close proximity to children, because I do think part of the problem is that some people just don't know these things, so.
Why don't you send me a list of what you think is important, and I'll try to synthesize them with my list when I work on the card.
Okay.
Good.
Because it's also, I mean, two of the neighbors I have that use the leaf blowers the most have lived there their whole lives, and they're, you know, they're older, and I don't know, not to say, but to your point, it's hard for me as somebody who's been here for 4 years to, first of all, I like them a lot, they're my neighbors, and we live so close together, I don't wanna like, you know, it's hard.
I mean, you don't wanna, but
Of
if
course.
you at least
But I
have
think
some
if there was a
guidelines,
guideline,
something.
like, you know, this does cause hearing loss within
Right.
children under, you
Well,
know,
it's also bad
developing
for
years. Because then maybe they'll see my kids and be like, maybe this isn't a good idea.
It's not
Right,
just
yeah, well, that's a kind of neighbor to neighbor
It's
thing.
asthmatic, it's all kinds of stuff.
It's
I
really
mean,
not
there is
good.
the asthma
We
stuff.
could have some of those guidelines in the language.
Well,
How's
we're
it
gonna have
affect
it in
your
the
eyes?
card and then see where we're
Things
going.
flying.
Blue on your eyes.
Blowing in your eyes, you're not gonna like it here as an
That's
expert
more
on
business.
eye care.
Okay, so when we're not blowing, you start chipping rocks.
Okay, we're gonna chip rocks now. Thank you, Kathy. All right,
Because they're, NOLA.
all right, you guys are in.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your
Thanks
hard
for
work.
your,
And this is a great.
Now we go to the next.
right, the next noise issue, and this is the rock
This is a
chipping.
nice
Is this
issue.
another noise issue?
Yes. So. I guess, Brian, we're gonna just give some background on the rock chipping, what we've done so far, and where we
Sure.
are at this moment.
Thanks, everybody.
Sure, so when last we left this, back in later in 2016, the issue was addressed by simply limiting the days on which rock chipping could take place, and then the hours. And then the hours that that it could be done on those days.
That was the draft.
No, it wasn't there?
No, that was enacted.
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah, that might have been the
Just to
first
do
one.
something
Did
quickly.
you vote on it? Yeah, it was December, so I think you're
Oh,
right.
okay.
Yeah, it was November, I think.
Beginning of December, yeah. So, anyway, at the time, at the time, the general discussion was that we'd like to look at it a little more comprehensively, a little closer, and so that's the purpose of this discussion. So, I know that, just to give a little bit of background, first of all, the mayor obviously wrote about this, you probably read that, shared his views on it, and I think he actually hit a few points very clearly with what he said. The reason that this came to the forefront is that there was a very long period of time that rock chipping was taking place. The reality, though, of what happened is there were 4 separate lots that were being chipped in the Dearman Park, Stearns Ridge, whatever you want to call it, behind the high school. And none of those, if you were to enact a fixed length of time similar to the rye law that you've looked at, which is 38 days, and there's probably a reason for that, but.
I figured out why it is, why
Did you?
28 days, yeah.
Okay.
Because
Let's see if it
probably,
matches with
no,
what
no,
we think.
probably somebody said 30, that's not long enough, 60, that's too long, they split the difference, 45. But remember, you can get a 7-day extension.
Yeah.
Almost automatically, so the 38 to 7 is 45.
Could be.
Oh, that's a math person.
There's another explanation for it
What's
too.
the other one?
Well, the other explanation is that the cost to chip a lot, to chip on a lot per day is approximately $2,600, and if you multiply 2,600 by 38, that's just under $100,000, and the cost to blast a lot is about $100,000. So there's a reason there too, maybe, so.
You're married too.
So anyway, we'll
Unless
see.
you have a spare
Why?
tomahawk.
I'd like to get a third, I'd like to get a third.
Yeah, how can you argue? Obviously 38 days.
Let's do that right now. Exactly.
Well, I think we should
Two
use 38
compelling
days.
reasons.
But, so my observation, in talking to Ed about this, is that if you had enacted a fixed limit on the number of days that a lot could be chipped,
That could have still happened.
it would have still happened the same way it happened. In fact, the chipping on one of the lots was only 10 days. Others, it was, 30, but you put them all together, they were going one lot at a time and separate lots, and under the rye law, it could have happened the way it happened.
But at least we've already done something to limit the time.
Yeah.
Time, yeah.
Yeah,
No chipping.
yeah, so that was positive.
This
So,
is what we did before.
This is what we just passed.
Right, this was local law 10.
And I like the thing in the rye talking about dust collection. Do we have that already in our rulings about?
I don't,
Well, I don't know that it would be in rock chipping, but it would probably, my guess is it might be in the site plan review. you know, when they're doing site plan.
I mentioned that, have you ever heard them talk about dust? I know they do for,
About watering,
but that's coming in and out of the truck entrance where you want to
yeah, that's
dust-
true,
take
yeah.
the dust off the dump
Yeah,
truck.
no, you're right, yes.
So we'll
No,
look,
in fact, I don't, frankly, on any of those, the Dearman Park or the Stearns Ridge, were these the Stearns Ridge ones? Yeah, I don't remember any discussion, actually, I don't remember ever coming up
Right.
before the planning board about
I
the
can-
chipping.
I can look into the dust aspect of it, and if
Yeah.
it's not covered anywhere else, then it sounds like you're interested in that part, so that's
Dust,
That's
dust mitigation plan.
yeah. we
But
can-
that could, you know, that could be added to
You're right.
to the site
Ears,
plan regulations.
mouth.
Well,
I mean, however it
Long
would
as
get implemented, right.
Yeah.
I mean,
So the concern, so the way Brian laid it out, and it was also expressed similarly in that newspaper article that I sent you from the Journal News. The whole thing's a balancing act, obviously. If you completely ban rock chipping and you completely somehow make blasting completely infeasible, you've potentially made it so lots can't be developed. I mean, so there's an issue there, I suppose. But so the issue is a balancing act, and one of Brian's concerns was, you know, if you so restrict chipping and blasting is very expensive, are you somehow getting into a taking of property? And I don't know that we need to get into the legal aspect of that, but one of the observations that I had when talking to Ed about this is that essentially there's 3 lots that are out there right now that have limited site development plan approval, all the ones, and they're all in Stearns Ridge, Dearman Park, whatever they call it. And there's nothing else out there that has limited site development plan approval, certainly that would involve chipping currently. So the suggestion is that if you establish your limit, whatever that limit is, if you do decide to go to a daily limit, that you have some sort of an opportunity for the lots that currently have site development plan approval,
a grandfather.
or to have an ability to have an extension beyond that window, so as not to change the terms of the game in the middle of the process, essentially.
but I have a fundamental problem about whether or not we should be allowing some of these lots to be developed to the extent they are. I mean, they're basically, maybe they shouldn't be allowed to be built to the extent they're being built. When you see people chipping away to put houses and swimming pools in, it's like at some point, you know, this is when I wrote that in the email about the code modernization, we're talking about whether there should be a restriction on steep lot development, a certain percentage restriction. Right now, it's just a restriction for coverage calculations, but it doesn't block you from building.
Didn't you also say, though, that a time limit restriction may also serve as a restriction on, you know, if a,
They can't do it within that
right,
period
if
of
a piece
time.
of property
They
is
can't
so
plan that kind
untenable.
of house.
I didn't say that.
Well, I thought you had said that in.
No, I said something else.
Yes, I thought so too.
Not the time limit, I said something about,
The limit on the number of days, if you put a limit on the number of
maybe I
days.
said that, but
But
not
in a
this.
number of days, it would make something that's untenable. You
Yes,
can't do it in
right,
30 days.
yes.
Right.
But they should be able to know that at the time of, these engineers and the architects know the volume that, or
Yeah.
can estimate the volume. They know, they do cut and fill analysis all the time to figure out how many dump trucks or loads are coming in or out and how to balance it. They should also be able to calculate, worst case, what the rock load is, because they know the volume they're extracting and the rock configuration. So I'm not sure why there couldn't be a limit to how much rock you can remove. I don't know why it couldn't be reviewed during planning board.
So it could be either, could the number of days then, in a way, translate to, I can't make this kind of building because I know I can only do 36 days, so I can't get a.
Unless they get an extension.
Well,
Well,
45. So
well,
how
those are
much
the only ones
rocks
that-
to be removed in 45 days?
Right,
So
this
that's
is the
number.
kind of house I have to plan.
How many, I saw somewhere where it said you could have 2 jackhammers running or 2 jacks, what do we call the big hammers?
But didn't Rye restrict how many you could use?
How many did Rye restrict?
I think just one. Oh, two?
I don't think we've ever had two running, well, maybe during, on the same property, could they even fit two? I don't know, some of the smaller properties.
So can we just back up a second? The purpose of this is to figure out what else we might want to add to our
That's all very
regulation of
short,
rock
yeah,
chipping.
right.
And we're looking at the city of Rye as possibly a model,
Mhm.
with the notion of definitely we want to consider restricting number of days.
Right.
With the thought that that would affect the kinds of projects. One thing that I believe is true, it may not be true, and I know it was true when we were building the new school, high school, you don't necessarily know for certain sure how much rock you got when you start, you know, so you can find rather unpleasant surprises. Even if you take borings, you can miss some. So you
In the Stearns Ridge case, almost all of that property is stone, not right? Like,
okay,
but I know in general, you're right, you never know until you are in the ground.
right. So just we have to create restrictions, but with knowledge of how that's also the reality.
So Larry, you got this law from Rye, did you by chance talk to the city manager there? I thought that, I thought a friend of mine was the attorney, but he's not, because I wrote him today to see how this law works there, because it's been.
Well, I can talk to the current city manager.
It might be helpful, that might be helpful to know, you know.
So one of the things we decided is we want to do is see something with a dust mitigation plan connected to these applications for rock chipping.
Yeah, assuming that it's not elsewhere in the code, which probably isn't.
And I'm certainly in favor of some kind of restriction on the days. I mean, that seems.
Well, we already did that. Oh, the number. Yeah.
Right, no, we don't have that passed, so I think, but there is, there's an interesting issue about, well, how many lots are there around Irvington to develop? I suppose you could tear down a whole house and then try to
Well,
make
for
a
instance,
basement go
if
down.
someone bought my house, they would have to, in order to enlarge it all, they would have to do a massive amount of chipping to be able to get it to the point, because it's just the way it is. So,
Does the Donato property require any rock chipping, as far as we know?
the one up on the top, you mean Market Ridge or Donardville? No, by their test borings, it's supposedly all mainly loose stuff up there. They haven't found that it was actually Rock Ridge that it was built up on. At least that's how they presented it from their borings.
So our hope is that going forward, we're talking about individual pieces of property as opposed to developments.
I mean, who knows, you could take a whole apartment complex and get rid of everything and say, now we want to.
The Carafiello property, I have no idea whether.
Well, they were talking about, remember,
Oh, we
they
have a
would
lot
have
of
had
them
a
last
massive amount of rock removal to get back in that hill.
Yeah,
Right,
so,
that's true, that was a big one, I forgot, yeah.
and there may well be other ones around, I mean,
Well, I think there are two reasons to control it. One is the noise and how much that drives you crazy, and the other, if it also serves as a way to control the kind of project that can be done by the number of days or by some other method in a law, I'm finding myself going in that direction.
Well, and putting the daily limit on it
Would have
in
some,
some cases,
Yeah.
serve to
Do that.
have the owners, the developers design something that is responsive to the landscape as opposed to fixing the landscape,
Yeah,
changing the
right.
landscape,
The house should
which was
fit the
Brian's
spot.
point also, yeah.
Right, and if that's achievable by the days, I like it, but it's a goal in and of itself, other than just, we don't want to listen to this.
But I think it's going to be achievable also in the long run. I think if you come at it by actually starting to protect, I'm not saying it should be part of this law, but in general, when some code updates happen because of the new comprehensive plan, if you update, so you restrict the percentage of steep slope and very steep slope you can build on, then you're effectively
Yeah, you're doing
probably addressing a lot of,
same thing.
a certain amount of that, because that's where you see your rock.
Mhm. Steep slopes,
Typically.
rocks.
Not all the time, but
yeah,
Okay, well, I think we're agreed on the goals. I don't, what would be the next step with this then?
I mean,
I
we'll
mean,
have
the
to,
question is whether you want a law as, detailed as RISE and.
Is it a possible?
Well, you're gonna find out how well it works, that's the first question, right? Is
Yeah,
this,
but, assuming it does.
It seems detailed. Do we need that level of detail? That's the question I had when I was reading this.
Well, I mean, I also had a lot of questions about it, actually.
I have to say,
It's restricted to 38 consecutive days. You don't want them doing it on Saturday and
No.
Sunday, I would assume.
well, by definition, they can't,
I know.
in our code.
so it can't be consecutive days, 38
can they
days.
stop one and start counting again?
Well, yeah, that's the
Yeah,
other thing.
right.
Does it have to be all at once, or can you do, see, if they say 38 consecutive days,
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
saying.
they can set, so
No,
that,
but-
No,
not to
but they
them.
can't do it on Sundays.
But they can, but I
And they
mean,
can't do it on listed holidays, including Yom Kippur.
yeah, well, so that, I mean, I didn't quite understand the consecutive, anyway, that's
And here
just a
they
tracking
say
issue. But
consecutive
but aside from that, could you, if you've got oh God, and there's a 38 per lot, what about if you're doing a whole subdivision?
Right, see, and then you got this other one that's you can't do it within 500 feet of a school on testing days.
That sounds like a
And it
lot.
defines the tests, it's the testing days is a device.
right. Oh my God, let nothing get in the way of our testing. Our sanity, our kids, our toddlers, they're all right. The testing. Well, the testing.
So then, why should there be the same limit on each lot in Stern Ridge? But let's say Carapiello were subdividing his lot into, 4 lots. Does he have 38?
Times four.
38, and I know. But I mean,
And think about
there's a
that
lot of
plan of
questions.
his that had the 5 or 6 houses in a cluster, which would have been, a good deal of that would have been common because of the access driveway. So how is that calculated?
Well, what is the permit asking? Does the permit defining
Just
Property?
street address.
is the street address?
Looks by lot numbers and block.
I mean, so if you take Stearns Ridge, that was all part of, it originally was all part of one subdivision, right?
Yeah, but there were 7 lots by the time.
Once they're sold, it's, right.
I know.
Yeah, but that's an example of one developer doing the work, but lots get sold off all the time and then are developed independently.
Right,
So
right.
that, I mean, that one rule.
So I guess you have to do it per lot.
Yeah, I think that's probably the conclusion they came to. Yeah, there's one scenario where you might have one developer working it, but all the other scenarios would be separate.
And then with the common lot, the common.
And then, but then, okay.
It's an awful
Because
lot.
all that chipping would have to happen first before any property was developable, right? To chip in
Put
that
in the road.
deluge, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're talking about the Carpenter property.
Oh, but it seems like an awful lot for in this.
We'll see if there's a more elegant way to
Yeah.
get it implemented.
It just seems like
Was
this
that
is
one
really,
implement?
Well, I mean, we're not gonna be touching on school testing days and things like that, so,
Well, I mean, I guess, does everybody want to put a limit on days?
well, you have no limit now, so for, you might say 38 days on a single lot, when there's 4 lots that are together, sounds excessive, but right now they can chip till their heart's content.
Right, so some limit, at this point, there's no limits.
Right.
So to put in something that other communities have found are reasonable limits that works, allows the developers to do their job, but provides some respite for residents who are
Okay.
tormented.
And also in some way limits what can be developed.
Yes, right.
And that-
That's why I
So
said
limit on
goals
basis.
are important.
And it has to be by lot, because I don't see how else you can possibly do it.
Right.
So if something is broken up into lots and it's 4 separate things being constructed,
unless it's the case of subdevelopment, pre-build, where you have to put in all put in the gas, the utilities, you're building the road beds, all that stuff goes in before any lots start to get developed.
That's all right, none of you will be around when that happens.
So, but.
Again, in Irvington?
Remind me, what, we're gonna be chased out of town?
No,
It's no place else to.
There's not that much development.
I wasn't making a political statement.
So, remind me again why 38 days is a magic
Have you
number?
heard the two?
No,
theories?
no, but I'm
We
saying.
don't know.
Well,
How much can you do in what amount of time? I don't have a clue of how much a typical property around here might take, because you were saying some properties took 10 days and some took.
20, 30.
I mean, you can make it fewer days and then
Yeah, but
there's some mechanism for, requesting more, but with a good reason, or I don't know, some ridiculous.
Do we have a blasting restriction that is very restrictive compared to?
Yeah,
other communities?
actually, I thought, here's the blasting most, I made copies for you guys.
How, when was this added into the, this been there for a long time?
Fireworks displays.
Let me see if I can show it.
Let's see. Station of explosives.
Because I had brought up Ed's point about there's that balance between blasting and chipping.
Yes.
So in other words, we have regulations concerning
This-
blasting.
This is our
Yes.
blasting
Okay,
right.
so then there's the question, what do we do about chipping?
Right.
Right.
So what part of this is,
And are people chipping more because our blasting rules are so
Exactly.
restrictive?
exactly,
I think so.
that's Ed's assertion, but.
Well, I mean, that's the balancing act. I'm sure in some cases, when there's large expanses of rock that have to be blasted, which hasn't happened here, but
Right. Then you don't have a question, blasting is.
then it would make it more worthwhile. But for the most part, you're talking about a lot here and a lot there. So they're not going to be blasting out of Stearns Ridge for the last 3 lots. But if you clamp down and say no more than, 10 days per lot, then either they redesign it or they are blasting.
Right, but that's why that 38 number seems to.
I guess, yeah.
Be a number that.
Just read G and H for a minute, if you want a good laugh. Under record keeping, maybe, no, under.
See, now they can use you, Mark, in your phone
You could stand right next to the blast
with the decibels.
and check the
Peak
decibels.
particle velocity over pressure produced by.
Maybe they picked up your pieces though.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God.
Well, I imagine this is what they have to do.
Well, I mean, right.
This is from the 70s, this law?
It was
There's reference to something here.
2011, 6111?
Yeah, it wasn't updated.
Oh,
No, something else would have been,
there's a where it says industrial.
This wasn't-
Blah, blah, blah.
I was the attorney since 08, and this wasn't changed while I was the attorney, so it could have been something else that was on top.
They're just making reference here to 1972 and 73.
Oh my God, this is like.
Right,
I
so
don't know,
is there a problem with this? Are we looking to, is this been a problem, this blasting?
No.
So what we're looking at now is the chipping to,
but Ed's, do you have Ed's note?
Yeah.
It's in the back.
Yeah.
And he says,
Well, it's not a statement
Oh, it's just a
of, it's a comment that there is a relationship, that's all, that's the only comment. That was back when we were educating ourselves on the whole topic.
now what about this last one, resident suggestion, limit chipping from 9 to.
That's what ended up happening.
Yeah,
Three.
that's what we
We
did.
limit
Yeah.
it to 3?
Yeah,
I thought-
Well, no,
Well,
no,
we
no,
did
it ended up
tell-
being 5, but
we said no shipping after 5 PM and before 9
Right.
AM, no
Yeah.
Saturday and Sunday.
you were still deciding how deep to get into it, and the suggestion was made at the time to just deal with the hours so we can get with that done quickly. And that's what was done.
I guess we can't just add days. Just one little line about days. You can't do this because it's too complicated.
Well,
No,
no, I mean, I think you would need some kind of a permit or something, because otherwise, how do you how do you keep track?
Yeah,
you
it
know?
doesn't, yeah, you need a permit to, because you might have an extension.
And that was the stuff in the rod that
yeah.
I think you needed, yeah. You can't just,
So right now, people don't need to get permits for chipping, only for blasting?
I don't think so.
I don't know what the process is.
Well, that would seem to be something we would want to do, that people would need to get permits for chipping, and we're limiting the, or maybe not, if it's not been needed,
Well, apparently it has been needed, I mean, that was why this came up, but again, I don't know that,
It's not gonna solve their problem if that,
no.
based on, if it was a one-off
Actually,
house.
that's a really long time, you know, 38 days is 7 weeks, and you get the extra thing on.
But they, I guess,
It's a long time, it's months.
but how long have they been listening to this project up there? For a year and a half, or? That, the Riverview Road, the Stern,
Yeah, well, I think that's what Larry was saying in the beginning, it was four houses going out.
Yeah,
So I don't remember if it was 6 months, 4 months, what it was.
it's been a long time that they.
Yeah,
But
but
some-
if it's a 38 days times 4,
I know.
38 times 4, it's
Still would be a long
152. And Fire says 30 weeks, 30 and a half
But I
weeks.
thought it was even longer than that they've been, we'd have to ask Brian, when did it start? But, well, I don't know how much more we can do tonight, but, I mean, we do want to find out from Rye what we can, and,
it does sound like we should look at this, if Ed's comment that the blasting, the restrictions on blasting are encouraging the chipping, and now we're not really requiring permits or regulating the chipping, we just did, at least in terms of times of ed, we need to look at the whole thing.
They're
And see what
related.
makes sense about, the relationship between the two.
is
Because
blasting
if there's a balance, that we should be looking at both sides of the scale, right?
is blasting as dangerous and bad as it used to be? Is this exactly the same
Well,
process as it?
I think there are different concerns, and if you look at the blasting
That is-
law, a lot of the concern is what it can do to people's houses.
Yeah, that's
You know,
true,
so-
so,
and that's why you have to do the survey, you have to notify the neighbors
So
and
that
stuff
has-
like that, so that's a little bit different
It
than.
has a lot of
And
downsides.
the issue to the rock chipping is I suppose it could, cause reverberations, but the main thing is the noise.
Right.
The noise and the dust. The
Well, this
dust is pretty easy to deal with, I think. And the noise, I just put a limit on it, send Mark out there with his.
I do think there must be somewhere to, you guys laugh at me, but those apps are for your phones too. You're getting your phone.
I'm still not going out there.
So here's the thing, I still think, I lived through,
On my phone.
oh, no,
It's not on your phone.
not on a feature phone. But
The only thing you do with your phone is call me. Come out there.
I think yours is even a flip.
Mine is a flip.
Oh, yours is, no, that's a more modern flip.
Oh, no.
I had to
This
live
is-
through Hugh Hill.
Oh.
And that went on for quite a while.
Oh.
At that time, we had no.
Okay, right.
And then they were building 5 houses at the same time, or?
It wasn't all of them, it was like, there was a stormwater chipping, system that it chipped through, I don't know, it wasn't quite as bad. It just seems to me that there must be somewhere, I don't know how to do it, but it seems like it's the aggregate in a neighborhood area that's the problem. It's like, so, it's almost like there's a sound-free day resource, you know what I'm saying?
It's also a different, by the nature of the project, they're gonna, if it's a subdivision that's 4 lots and you're building 4 things, it's gonna, I don't know.
Well, that's the key, is there any way to kind of look at,
Well,
like an area has a noise budget? I don't know how you do it.
it's like cap and trade.
Exactly.
Like what? Like cap and trade. It's like the emissions, and you're,
I'll trade you so many decibel hours.
right, or.
A leaf blower.
That's good.
Oh, I don't know, I'm not gonna be able to think of anything else tonight that can solve this, but I certainly,
Well, I don't
I
think
think we're certainly concerned, I mean, by the noise and and the development in places that maybe there shouldn't be development because there's so much rock. That's where that's all I know. I don't know how to solve it. I just know that I'd like to solve it.
I mean, if you could do it on a subdivision level, if you could have turned back the clock, you could give some kind of perhaps you could give some kind of an overall budget during attached to the subdivision itself. You get only so many days worth of shipping, period, in this subdivision.
Then you buy it, you buy that lot.
And then, you buy the lot.
Yeah, but then the last guy buys the lot, and everybody else used up all the time.
That's like, we just bought it.
No swimming pool for you.
I like that,
And no basement.
All right, just tell me one or two things that are gonna happen over the.
Well, do you want, is there an interest in like putting a limit on the number of days?
I think that's reasonable.
37?
Well,
We just want to be different and make 37.
can we just figure out what that means? I mean, why did that, does Ed have a sense
Well,
of,
maybe Ryan does.
I'll try to find out.
if there's certain, how much volume are we talking about in a typical lot that he sees around here? There's no typical lot, I understand that, but maybe he's got a rule of thumb of what to expect. Because maybe 38 days is way too long for any of our properties.
Well, nobody's gonna want to do it longer than they need to.
Well, it's expensive.
Because it's expensive.
Well, yeah, but it's back to the resource thing.
Yeah.
If you only allow it to go for 20 days, how much are you saving? I mean, I don't know, that's why I'm saying I have no sense of what that
Terry,
means.
how did you land on the Rye law? Were
I
you
had found
looking around for these, or, I just wondered if there's any others.
Well, I just know there was a significant amount of controversy on the Rye law.
There was, huh?
Yeah,
It took them like a year
a long
Oh,
time.
wow, with the testing.
Huh.
Right, so I just remembered that it was.
Oh, so then it will be interesting to see how it played out, how it's working out.
All right, that seems like the only
Yeah,
next
why
step we
don't
have, right? Okay.
Well, before we draft something, why don't you get a sense of that? And,
And you'll talk to Ed, maybe see if he's got some experiential rule of thumb that could let us know what, Because like I said, if most of the lots are done in 10 or 15 days, then it's not an issue.
I'm just
No.
lost in wonderment at the phrase experiential rule of thumb.
That's good. No, it's a good one.
It's a good one.
It's a
I'm
good
just
one.
trying to think of,
So why don't, okay, so you're gonna talk to Ed, you're gonna talk to Ryan, we're gonna see if we can come up with at least,
All right, I'll gather more information.
Okay.
Makes sense.
This meeting is adjourned.